My heart is still racing. I'm sure all of yours is as well. That was a whirlwind of a round one, but just like we expected, Hayden, completely unpredictable from pick 2 until 32. Just as we talk about this for months and months, everything surprises us here in the first round of the NFL draft. On this show, we'll be recapping, reviewing every single selection, why they made the pick, how this prospect, how this player fits in with their new teams, and yes, giving a grade from the mind of Hayden Winks for each one.
I'm excited about the grade. I try to be a pretty harsh grader. There's a process that goes into this. First of all, we've both watched all these guys, how it fits in. Are they reaching on guys? Is there just like a general plan that they can explain or that we can read into? So I try to be as harsh of a grader as possible, and I still ended up with a lot of A+ grades. But like you said, very unpredictable all the way at the top. David Bailey was not the favorite when they were on the clock, and he still cashes in there. And then obviously number 3 was not the favorite. Number 4 was not the favorite. All the way down, underdogs win. And of course, that's who we're represented by.
That's what we care about the most. This is just one piece of content that we have all week long. Keep in mind that tomorrow, around noon Eastern, I will have a second round mock draft for all of you, gearing up for, I would argue, the best day of draft weekend, day 2, rounds 2 and 3. And then we'll be back on Saturday and Sunday for AFC and NFC draft rankings once all 7 rounds are complete. And if you're watching this tomorrow morning, Friday morning, welcome. Hit subscribe, leave a thumbs up. Again, we've got you covered here with all the content that you need throughout draft weekend. And then we immediately vault and turn the page over into fantasy content, including some dynasty rookie rankings. All right, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go 1 through 32, spend time on each of these selections, and we'll take a bit of a breather here on the first one. And Fernando Mendoza is the pick at number 1 to the Las Vegas Raiders. Simply put, and this will be the last time we kind of talk about it until, I don't know, June, what does Fernando Mendoza do best, and how does that fit here in Clint Kubiak's offense?
I think he's a very trait-C quarterback, and I think that he has some development and going through his full field reads, but I see a very tough player. I see someone that stands at 6'5", 236 pounds, that I ended up kind of comping him to Ben Roethlisberger because he's willing to take a hit. I think his arm talent is actually a little bit underrated. Some of his best throws, actually for sure his best throws, are big sideline passes, a lot of back shoulder balls down the field. He can move around enough. There's a couple scrambles, and obviously he can fight through contact. We saw that in the championship game. And then the stuff that I have worries about, which is like maybe a little bit panicky and kind of eyes down after the 1-2. Well, guess what? We can believe in the human being here and imagine 5 years from now what this thing is going to look like. So I'm really excited about Fernando Mendoza. I think him versus other first overall picks, I think that Mendoza actually grades out pretty favorably. I would rather have him than Cam Ward, for example. So Matt Ryan, Trevor Lawrence, Big Ben. Yeah. I think that we're going to be looking at a top 10 level quarterback in the NFL with, I think, room to kind of be in that like fringe top 5 category.
With Clint Kubiak, we saw that his Saints offense kind of led the NFL in that opening 6 weeks of the season in downfield shots. He obviously carried that to the Seattle Seahawks with Sam Darnold. Right now, with this team, Hayden, we know there are 6 rounds left, but it's Ashton Genty, Brock Bowers, Jalen Naylor in free agency, Trey Tucker, Jack Besh, even if you want to throw that out there. You said that Fernando Mendoza can eventually be a top 10 quarterback in the league. What are your expectations with this group that he's surrounded around? I'm glad they got him a center. I'm glad that he doesn't have to start immediately if he's not ready for it, since Kirk Cousins is out there.
Yeah.
But what are your expectations here?
Well, I don't expect him to play early on in the season. Like right after they said that the plan is, and they're hopeful. They're hopeful that he doesn't play this entire season. That's insane to me. I want to see Fernando Mendoza early on. They should be hopeful that Fernando Mendoza is so clearly ahead of Kirk Cousins that he starts week 1. I do think they have that as the plan in place here. I think long-term, this Raiders team needs a big physical outside wide receiver. Obviously, Brock Bowers does some of that with his size, and he plays outside wide receiver. But so many of these big boy throws from Mendoza are to the sideline. They don't have somebody on the roster for that. Obviously, the Raiders are trying to play for 2030. They're trying to get this thing rolling and off the ground here. It's going to take some time, but I see somebody in the chat comparing him to like Carson Palmer. I think those are like excellent comps here. I do think we're going to see a very good Fernando Mendoza, let's say in about 3 or 4 years from now.
just from a throwing perspective, I thought he was very Sam Bradford-ish. Again, they have picked 36, 67, and then 3 fourth-round selections. But what this team is craving and what Fernando Mendoza is craving is a guy who wins with back shoulders, who wins with contested balls, who is willing to go up and win those tight window targets, because not a lot of these quarterback prospects are willing to make those throws. That is the standout trait for Fernando Mendoza in terms of tight windows, tight coverage. I'm going to give my guy a chance. And that was Elijah Surratt. So I wouldn't hate it all if we get like to pick 67 and he just adds Elijah Surratt here to kind of round out that pass catching group. What he needs to work on is just the middle of the field stuff. You know, it was rarely targeted, rarely full field reads, but I think he's smart enough to learn how to do that. He has so many of the other traits that we look for here that I'm very excited to see what Fernando Mendoza does, even in his rookie season, once he gets there. All right, you hinted at it. Let's talk about the second overall pick, because there was even like a mini competition going on heading into the draft between the local Jets media and then Big Draft, the draft insiders. Local said Arvell Reese. Big said David Bailey. And you said it. The markets out there got up to about 70%, if not much higher than that it was going to be Arvell Reese. Then the Jets got on the clock. No visit, no problem. Texas Tech edge rusher David Bailey is the selection. Your thoughts?
I give this one a B. It's not the pick that I would make, but I can understand the thought process here. David Bailey's first step is out of control. He also has a really like legendary spin move. He got that on Spencer FANO. At times, I think that there's a chance he can be Nick Bonito. I think that maybe a more middle ground outcome would be Vic Beasley. Remember, Vic Beasley, before his career went sideways, was one of the top-end pass rushers, winning with speed. I think that he doesn't have the bend of the Von Millers, and I don't think that he has the bend of the Nick Bonitos, but his first step acceleration is out of control. That paired with this spin move that he has is pretty sweet. I think for the Jets, what I'm maybe a little bit concerned with is both of your edge rushers are pretty light in the shorts. How are you going to be able to navigate the run game and the run defense? I don't think that David Bailey is horrific against the run. I would put that more in like the weakness column if I had to. So I understand the pick. I would have went with Arvell Reese myself here, but obviously that takes a little bit more imagination, and maybe Aaron Glenn's trying to like showcase, hey, we got 3 sacks in the first month here. I'm trying to save my job. Let's get some wins here. And that's why they maybe even added a third first round pick here. They're trying to win some PR. So I understand the pick, even if it's not the one I would have made.
They were 31st in sacks last year. No interceptions last season. A big part of that was some of the lack of disruption and pressure up front. I mean, Aaron Glenn is taking over this defense. This is his selection. This is him calling his shot. And I would say that David Bailey and Arvell Reese were very different types of linebackers or edge rushers, however you want to call them, hybrid players. What's interesting to me is Will McDonald, a first-round pick back in 2023, I think has some overlap here when we're just talking about like pure pass rushers. Maybe he's a bit more longer and fluid than David Bailey's point A to point B, and boom, going to get in the backfield in just the quickest amount of steps as possible. But I would say neither is like heavy in the pants when it comes to run defense. But then up the middle, you know, you make the move, trading away Jermaine Johnson for Tavondre Sweat, a massive human being. You bring in veterans like David Onyemata and Demario Davis. Like, this defense, I think, has a really interesting blend of youthful talent and then veteran talent, along with Mika Fitzpatrick, who might be playing, you know, the pure nickel spot for them this season. So again, Aaron Glenn was brought in to change the identity, change the culture of this team. He didn't do that at all. And Steve Wilkes, that defense was horrific last year. So he is taking over. It has to be in his image. And just hopefully for this team, they made the right selection, or there are plenty of reasons and opportunities to like poke holes in their process of picking David Bailey instead of the other.
The last thing I'll note about my grades is I'm grading it just for this draft class. It's not a very good draft class. I think I wanted to mention that here because I had David Bailey as my 4th overall player. In a normal draft, he's not a 4th overall player. So I would not expect, you know, Nick Bosa results here. Abdul Carter last year, I had way higher. So sometimes like Aiden Hutchinson and Trayvon Walker would have been higher for me as well. This is somebody that typically gets drafted 8th to 15th overall. So I would not be expecting, you know, 14 sacks in a season here. It'd be a really nice outcome if he was a 10 sack player. And I do think he has a chance to do that, even if you're sacrificing some of the early down stuff with him.
And obviously, we have a lot more Jets talk on the way, 2 more first-round selections. So if you're a Jets fan, leave a thumbs up right now. By the way, 2,000 of you are on YouTube right now. Thank you so much for watching us. Hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, allow more people to find this show and this channel as we go along here. And the next pick is a big one because there were mentions from maybe the New Orleans Saints or the Kansas City Chiefs. If ARVELL REESE is on the board, then a team could potentially move up. The Arizona Cardinals, it sounded like throughout this entire process, one of their main goals was to move back. Instead, Hayden, they sit and they pick and they take the running back, Jeremiah Love, out of Notre Dame at number 3 overall. I'll lead this off and say Mike LaFleur, in his first time as a head coach, first season here with Arizona, he comes from the McShanahan tree. All of his mentors care about running backs. And you could argue he's already invested quite a bit in running back and bringing back James Conner and adding Tyler Algier in free agency. But you and I both know that Jeremiah Love is a different beast, a different animal when it comes to explosive plays and different gears that he brings to the offense compared to those two. So Hayden, I just wanted to start off on that note because I know you're going to take a different tune here with Jeremiah Love.
Jeremiah Love is going to be a fantastic running back in the NFL, and this was a horrific decision by the Arizona Cardinals. We just saw this play out with Ashton Genty in the Raiders. He's going to lose valuable reps as a rookie because the rest of the team is not ready. They don't have the right tackle in order. They don't have the quarterback. I really now question who the quarterback is going to be because Ty Simpson gets sniped from them. It's just too hard to overcome the lack of surplus value here. Based off his guaranteed money off the rookie wage scale, he has the most guarantees of any running back in NFL history. This year, and over the duration of this rookie contract, he's the RB7 in terms of per year salary. He has to be James Cook or better. And let's say he's Jahmyr Gibbs. He's got a chance to be Jahmyr Gibbs. The surplus value is like $5 to $8 million, give or take, over the market. Versus guys at higher paid positions, all throw at tackle. This could have been a wide receiver or an edge rusher. Those guys, when they hit, those we're talking about $40 million per year players. And then lastly with this, you have to look around which positions are impossible to find in free agency. And those are the left tackles. Those are the right tackles. Those are oftentimes edge rushers. Look what just Jalen Phillips signed with the Panthers over there versus running backs. ETN was cheap. Kenneth Walker was cheap. Bucky Irving was a 4th-round player. You can find hits. I mean, even the Arizona Cardinals with James Conner over the last half decade. It's easier to find running backs on top of this, and that's why it's such a bad pick for the Arizona Cardinals. I think he's going to be awesome. This is just really bad in a rebuild. There's so many pieces away for this to happen. I think this was, to me, one of the worst process picks, even though we both acknowledge Jeremiah Love has a chance to be a Jahmyr Gibbs type of player.
Okay. You make a ton of valid points. Would you mind, though, if we did some like good cop, bad cop stuff here? Because
go ahead.
I would like to speak just glowingly about the player because he is going to help them win games to the degree of other backs on their team were not going to. And just an offense with Jeremiah Love, Michael Wilson, and Marvin Harrison, if like Mike LaFleur can step in and take some learnings that he had from the New York Jets, which, by the way, he used a ton of pony personnel stuff with that team and got creative and all that type of stuff. That's a fun trio to have, along with the figurehead of the passing attack, which is Trey McBride. I will add, when given the line of scrimmage, and you can ask Josh, how often is that going to happen? This dude averaged 10 yards per carry when contacted beyond the line of scrimmage. That is the most of any running back prospect in at least the past 10 years. He also led this running back class with 4.2 yards after contact per rush. I mean, over 7 yards per touch, 19 touchdowns as a 19-year-old sophomore. He just reminds me, and again, maybe I'm getting a little sentimental here, of Reggie Bush plus 12 pounds that runs a 4.36. Would I have loved this pick at pick 7 instead? 100%. But do I think that this is like only ownership meddling? I don't. I actually think that like Nathaniel Hackett and Mike LaFleur and all these guys wanted this one player, and in a league that is so difficult to create explosives in the passing game. They have players that can do that. You also have a chance of doing that in the rushing game. I just need to see some improvements along the offensive line too.
Yeah, I mean, the Cardinals were 4th worst in pressure rate last year. They gave up the 4th most points. You know, like, this defense is not good enough, and ARVELL REESE would have been awesome for it. So it's one of these situations, like, yes, it's an upgrade to it. He's going to be a very good player. If he busts, like, that would be massively surprising. I hope he's like Reggie Bush, but we just seen so many times, like, even when Bijan Robinson is good, the Falcons, all of a sudden, they're on the clock, and then they're like, okay, well, we still need edge rushers, man. Like, we're still reaching for all these other positions. It just doesn't work out. The Giants, how good was Saquon Barkley, man? And then they are on the clock, and they're reaching on guys and busting. I think that's just the problem here. And, you know, Saquon Barkley is another one of these guys. Was awesome. And then he goes to the Eagles when the offensive line was established, and then all of a sudden he returns to the all-pro caliber player that he was. So, yeah, I hope they sell a lot of jerseys, man.
Yeah, just a question. I understand the ARVELL REESE stuff. And look, if another team was offering a 2027 first-round pick like Daniel Jeremiah suggested the Saints might, who knows what really came to fruition. Maybe in a couple weeks we'll get some behind-the-scenes stuff. They should have taken that, right? And they should have improved a different pillar position. This from James Palmer. Shout out producer Weeze for aggregating some tweets throughout the night. From another general manager, they should take Jeremiah Love. He's an effing stud, best player in the draft. You're saying it doesn't matter if he's the best player in the draft, like, because positional value, how you build your roster, it is difficult to get, you know, edge rushers, offensive linemen, all that type of stuff. I will say, again, from a roster building perspective, it can be, I think, argued that this NFL now is different than it was 5 years ago. How rushing schemes and rushing importance matters more now than it did 5, 7 years ago. On top of that, and I don't know if, like, the salary has caught up to it. And on top of that, all of the running backs that have recently, in the last 10-ish years, 13-ish years, that have been drafted in the top 10, like in the elite range, have awesome. Basically turned into elite players. And you and I both think that Jeremiah Love is going to bring that to the table here too.
Yeah, I think if, you know, the Titans did this because they've invested in the offensive line a little bit more and they have the quarterback in play, I wouldn't roast this as much. If the Commanders, if he fell to 7th overall and they did it, once again, not that big of a deal. I'm just looking at, like, the Giants, and when they're drafting, you know, players to help out on the offensive line for their quarterback, like, to me, that's just a better way to do this. So if they were turning down picks to go down and draft Mauigoa, Vega, Spencer Fanu, I think that's just a way better avenue here. So yeah, pretty unfortunate. I do wonder if this is just Cardinals ownership just trying to get some momentum with the fan base and whatnot. And the second I hear jersey sales as part of the pitch to try to pick the best player, I'm beyond doubt. I mean, we're trying to win football games. You know who's going to help win football games? You know, the edge rushers that make $40 million a year. You got to take some chances here with the Arizona Cardinals.
Last thing I'll add, I think Jeremiah Love's a fantastic prospect. We didn't even talk about his receiving aspect. He's good in pass pro. He's great when you motion him out, even as like a standard wide receiver. He actually ran legit downfield routes. The one caution I had with his profile was his short yardage stuff. I mean, you go back and watch like the Texas A&M game, I think Boise State. There were a bunch of others where he just got shut down. Miami at the goal line. Guess who they brought in free agency that's going to be a bit of a thorn in our side in those touchdown scoring opportunities? Tyler Algier, just like rookie season Bijan Robinson too.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's not a 15 carry guy with the Arizona Cardinals. If that's closer to like 12 carries, and he's going to have 5 receptions per game because they're going to be trailing because they don't have a good defense.
All right, I know I projected Jeremiah Love at number 4 overall to the Tennessee Titans, and instead, when Jeremiah Love is no longer on the board, they selected Ohio State wide receiver Carnell Tate. Hayden, is this as simple as without Jeremiah on the board, that this shows that the 4th overall pick, no matter what, was going to be about helping Cam Ward help their youthful offense? Because I would have loved to have seen ARVELL REESE in a Robert Saleh defense.
Yeah, I wonder if David Bailey was going to fall if they would just went for the pure edge rusher here. But for Carnell Tate, obviously, we love this for Cam Ward. My comps for Carnell Tate, DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, who he's going to be obviously learning from with Tennessee, and then like lower end comp would be Jeremy Maclin. I see somebody that was nitpicked because he's not a really fast receiver, but because he can break on like these big in breakers or these big out routes. he can kind of tempo his routes and have a little bit more salesmanship out in the route, which I do think ends up helping him down the football field. So even though he's not fast, he can still get down the football field. 3.2 yards per zone route on top of that. So Wan'Dale Robinson, wiggle, 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 and then Carnell Tate on 3rd and 10s in the red area is going to be the guy that comes up here. So I think there's a chance he can develop into a very, very legit wide receiver 1 in the NFL. Just because he wasn't that in college does not mean he can't be that in the NFL. So I get this one for the Tennessee Titans. I ended up giving this a B- just because I think there's a couple other players that they could have gone, but I absolutely do not hate this pick. And if you want to lean on the offensive side of the ball with Cam Ward, definitely not going to hate on it.
I think you can argue that Cardinal Tate has the best hands in this class. I mean, he's a absolute technician with his catch technique, and he's also the embodiment that you don't have to run a 4-3 to just threaten defenses as a vertical playmaker. I mean, how he kept corners on their toes, how he chews up ground despite running a 4-5-3. It was notable every single time that you watched it. And on top of this, he caught 120 of 160 targets in college. This team added Wan'Dale Robinson, Brian Daboll's boy, in the slot. But other than that, I mean, it is high variance everywhere. Calvin Ridley, high variance. I like Ayumanor, high variance. And then you obviously have DK in his second season. So just bringing Carnell Tate into this, it adds not just stability, but like you said, I do wonder if there's like pure untapped potential from a volume standpoint, from a we're building the passing attack around you standpoint. So we have seen Brian Daboll call offenses in the past. Is there a similarity here with someone that you've seen in one of those systems, or that you can expect him to, fill that void on this team?
Yeah, I think it's just a good call out that he's going to see a lot more targets in the NFL that he did at Ohio State. Like, for one, the Tennessee Titans don't have the Ohio State defense. We're going to talk about all their defenders coming up here in just a second. But I just thought that he's so good on the in-breaking routes, and like that's how you really rack up some targets. So even though he's not crazy after the catch, he's kind of one of those guys where like how DeAndre Hopkins was, where you can win the back shoulder stuff, and then you can also be a demon on slants, in breakers, quick outs, those type of routes. He can sink his hips, and I don't think that the tape necessarily showed a really slow player for too much of it.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, he's so terrifying with how little fat he has on his routes. Like, the economic movements are there all the time. And then whenever he was given a one-on-one situation because of, Jeremiah Smith on the opposite side, whether it was, a safety and cover 4 or one-on-one with a corner outside and single high, they seem to always guess the wrong direction on multi-breaking routes. And then also the sideline stuff,
sensational.
And just understanding where the line to gain is. He was always getting to the right spot in the right timing. And he was our wide receiver 1. And so it wasn't a shock at all to me to see him as the wide receiver 1. Again, the only shock was that this was the wide receiver pick, and it wasn't the edge rusher or hybrid player that we know that Robert Saleh covets, that quote unquote fell to them at number 4.
Last thing I have, Carnell Tate. I would think you can largely kind of copy paste the Tetero McMillan stat line. I've put these guys in a very similar tier. Tetero McMillan, proven like more high volume player in college, but I would not be surprised if Carnell Tate kind of follows like those footsteps, and in terms of like target share and offense and stuff, it should be pretty similar. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carnell Tate's like the wide receiver 34, somewhere in that range in best ball, which is going to launch here in just a second on Underdog.
Just to make sure, did you give your grade for Jeremiah Love, or did I skip over it?
Jeremiah Love was a D+.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
like
being
me
nice.
In college. I got it.
I was being nice.
Yes, biology, not my strong suit. Final point here on Carnell Tate. PFF charted him with winning 85% of his contested targets this past season. You felt that. 53% of his targets went for a first down or a touchdown. That's the second best rate in this class. I actually compared him to Calvin Ridley with better sideline awareness, like that Atlanta Falcons Calvin Ridley that was paired with Julio Jones. It's a good player, man. Like, just a real solid wide receiver for this team. That brings us to number 5, and the surprises and the shocks continue as the New York Giants continue to add to their defensive front and bring in ARVELL REESE out of Ohio State. Hey, and I ask you, where the hell does another monster up front fit?
I think he's going to play off-ball linebacker as a rookie. There was a report instantly that Kayvon Thibodeau's definitely a trade candidate. They don't plan on trading him. Obviously, anything could happen, but they have 3 edge rushers. I projected ARVELL REESE as an off-ball linebacker that can walk up to the line of scrimmage, and I see somebody that's going to help the run defense instantaneously. This guy is so violent. This guy was knocking out tight ends. He can come up, obviously, in situations. He can be a blitzer. He can obviously rush the passer as a side hustle. I saw elite off-ball linebacker potential from ARVELL REESE because he's so physical, he's so fast, and I would not be surprised if Harbaugh actually had ARVELL REESE as the highest ranked player on his board, especially after the Dexter Lawrence trade. So I think he's going to be right next to Edmonds. He's going to be flying up the football field, and he's so young that we can envision him to turn into an even better player. Right now, his instincts in zone coverage are not like otherworldly. That happens as a rookie linebacker in the NFL, but the sideline stuff, him like on screens, him running up to the line of scrimmage to make plays against running backs, it's elite stuff. So I actually think he's going to play off-ball linebacker for the Giants, and this was an A+. He was my number 2 player. The fact that he fell to number 5 and it like checks a big need for the Giants, I thought this was going to be one of the best picks of round 1.
Yeah, if he's your number 2 player, I'm assuming you think that if you look back in this in 7 to 10 years, you think that ARVELL REESE is going to be the best defensive player from this class.
Yeah, he would be my most likely candidate for that. I think that there's going to be a modern NFL linebacker with, they're starting at the line of scrimmage, then they drop out. All of a sudden they're blitzing, they're spying. And that's really important in this division when you got Jaden Daniels in it, Jalen Hurts, and then obviously with Dak Prescott to a lesser degree, like just chasing these guys down. But I think we're going to be comping players in future drafts. Hey, he kind of reminds me of a version of ARVELL REESE. We've been doing that with Fred Warner. I think ARVELL REESE is going to be the unique player that we're aiming for. And I hope that he kind of plays this off-ball linebacker role. It'd be a lot of fun.
Well, when I projected the Chiefs moving up for ARVELL REESE at number 3, that was because of Steve Spagnuolo during his time with the Giants, having someone like Matthias Kiwanuka. Now, their frames are a bit different. Kiwanuka was taller. Obviously, ARVELL REESE is a bit squattier. But that was someone when their Super Bowl run would play off the ball and then move up in pure passing situations and rush the passer. By the way, Abdul Carter kind of did this back and forthness too. Yeah. Like, this is a dynamic front that Denard Wilson has now. And I'm really excited to see it because as we see across the league, they kind of sugar or pepper every single gap. You don't know who is blitzing, who is dropping, and that can create just a whole bunch of one-on-one situations or just pure confusion. And now you just have all these monster athletes getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. One final point, Denard Wilson just spent 2 seasons in Tennessee as their defensive coordinator. Prior to that was a defensive backs coach in Philly and Baltimore. I'm sure he loves having all these pressure guys up front. I'm sure he's also asking, where are my DBs, buddy?
I mean, they got safeties, enough safeties here. And I mean, if you have 3 edge rushers, you should be able to line up. You just mentioning Abdul Carter, the double A gap stuff with Abdul Carter and ARVELL REESE. I mean, these centers are going to be an absolute hell. Do not be in 3rd and 7 situations against the Giants.
Yeah. I'm wondering how many mock drafts the Giants did and how many of them actually ended up with ARVELL REESE as a possibility at number 5. I mean, it's not even out of the question that he could have gone number 2 overall or a trade up or number 4 overall. So just being in this spot, and it was always from our minds, Sonny Styles or Caleb Downs, and getting ARVELL REESE here was pretty magnificent.
ARVELL REESE dropped to 5th overall just 5% of the time in the thousands of mock drafts that you guys submitted. You guys submitted by 22,000 mock drafts. Thanks for doing that. This is a very fun project for us. But I have some data like this coming up.
At the end of this stream, at the end of the show, Hayden will also reveal who had the best mock drafts out there. And the top 5 get $100 in bonus funds over at Underdog. By the way, again, 9,000 of you, 10,000 of you watching at this point, hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up so even more people can join on the channel and on the show. Again, check your subscription feeds tomorrow around noon Eastern. We're going to have a 2nd round mock draft for you ahead of day 2 of the NFL draft. All right. Shall we jump to the Kansas City Chiefs and number 6 overall? This is a trade up. Chiefs get number 6. Browns, Dane Brugler on this program said Fernando Mendoza number 1 and the Browns dropping out. That's what they wanted to do. They got number 9, 74, which is in the 3rd round, and 148 in the 5th round. And the Chiefs move up for one of those pillar spots and get cornerback 1 in Mansoor DELANE. Your thoughts?
I predict he's going to sign a second contract with the Chiefs, which you mentioned. It never happens before. It's just this guy's so outrageously good at football. The change of direction, his zone instincts are just really good. He's got enough length to play through the ball, but really he gets there because he's just so calm. And I just will think that Spags is going to trust him to win the one-on-ones and then cook up all the diabolical pressure on the other side. I expect him to play on the outside, so this is not like a one-for-one Trent McDuffie replacement. I expect him to play outside corner, and I do think he has shutdown corner ability. I'd probably put him like one tier down from like Derek Stingley, but I do see a lot of similar traits between the two. He's not Patrick Surtain and Jalen Ramsey and like as physically dominant as those guys are. Stingley is just so calm, and I see a lot of that with Mansoor DELANE. So I give this one an A-, just because it checks such a big need. It was like him versus RUEBEN BAIN. Obviously, BAIN falls all the way to like, what, 15th overall. Mansoor DELANE is going to be a hell of a player for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and Mansoor had legit matchups nearly every single week in the SEC as well. I mean, his game against Casey Concepcion, while not every target went in Casey Concepcion's direction, was a really fun combo to watch. He played against, other first-round receivers during his time here at LSU as well. The stats, the underlying metrics are absolutely insane here for Mansoor DELANE. On 358 coverage snaps last year, he gave up 13 total catches for just 7 first downs, targeted only 35 times all season long, and he did not allow a single pass catcher to get 2 receptions against him all of last season. Just do that in the NFL and you'll be good, man.
Yeah, that's how you become an all-pro. Yeah. Did you see the same thing with him? It's just like the calmness with him. Like he's given the most difficult matchups, and aside from Casey Concepcion running by him a handful of times, the rest of the season was like as dominant as it gets. So I think he was maybe like arguably like one of the highest floor players in the draft class. And I think that's why the Chiefs wanted to make sure that they were going to jump the Commanders, who I thought were commonly mocked, to Mansoor DELANE, and they paid just a small price tag, but I think the Chiefs with the extra picks were comfortable doing it.
I mostly want to talk about the players and how they fit, but since we did have conversation 4 months on what these teams would do, I do want to ask you, were you surprised at all that they went with the cornerback and even in a trade up from 9 to 6 versus, RUEBEN BAIN that was there, or wide receivers have been linked there, or even right tackles have been linked to this spot? I mean, for a team that rarely, or if ever again in the next 5-6 years is going to draft in the top 10, this team certainly had some obvious needs that they needed in top positions too.
Yeah, I'm just guessing that they have DELANE in a tier above everybody else. So I was expecting a defensive lineman. We got one with Peter Woods. We'll get to in a couple hours from now, I'm guessing. But with Mansoor DELANE, he was just so clean that I think that everyone probably had, a top 8 overall grade on him. And we're talking about a premium position. So they're not going to have to play this kind of like, just get lucky that Spags can develop all these guys. Like, that has worked. That doesn't mean the next time they're going to do it, it was going to work again, and makes Spags' life a whole lot easier.
Yeah, and it wasn't just Trent McDuffie who they traded away that they lost. They lost their other starting quarterback to the Rams too, and Jalen Watson, because right now, and a safety. So with our lads, if you look at their depth chart, it's Kader Kohu at nickel, obviously Mansoor DELANE now, Nick Williams at their other cornerback spot, Kyer Elam, a failed first-round pick, Christian Fulton, I believe another failed first or second-round pick. On top of that, and their safeties are Chamari Connor and Alohi Gilman, who was traded mid-season last year. Like, Spags has turned chicken shit into chicken salad in a lot of other situations. This might be his most difficult feat so far. So giving him the top corner in this class, which, by the way, there was a significant gap after Jermod McCoy's medicals came back. That is noticeable. That is meaningful. And they probably felt like, since that gap is so much larger than any other position, moving up is the right move to make.
Loved it.
Okay, we'll move on. Number 7, the Washington Commanders stick and pick, and they take another Ohio State player in linebacker Sonny Styles. This was mentioned. We kind of moved away from it to the tune of wide receiver or Jeremiah Love or even Caleb Downs. So why do you think the Commanders wanted the central figure at linebacker or like a utility piece that can, you know, move backward and move forward so fluidly because of this freak athlete.
Since Adam Peters, the GM, has started making picks early on, nobody's had a higher relative athletic score than he has, and Sonny Styles absolutely lit up the combine. So by no means am I surprised here. I think DELANE would have been in play for them as well. Styles, he's going to be the green dot for this team. Leo Chanel and Frankie Louvu are kind of like interesting fits where they have like very clear roles, and then if you do anything beyond that, they're not nearly as good, where Sonny Styles is more well-rounded. Obviously playing like middle linebacker in the green dot as a rookie comes with a little bit of risk, but I think long-term Sonny Styles has, you know, the coverage ability and like the range and at his size to have a Fred Warner like impact. It's going to take years for that to develop. He wasn't playing with quite as much violence as you know, ARVELL REESE did, but Sonny Styles, his sideline to sideline ability is absolutely fantastic, and he's dealing with Jackson Dart, he's dealing with Jalen Hurts, so I think that his range is going to come into play here. I think Frankie Louvu and Leo Chenault will rotate, and Sonny Styles will be an every down player. So I give this one straight down the middle. B, the Commanders are not going to win the Super Bowl all of a sudden because they have Sonny Styles, but this was a very high floor pick, and I do think in a couple years from now would not be surprised if Sonny Styles and ARVELL REESE were like the top two linebackers in the NFL.
Chad, I promise to do a better job asking for the grade. Hayden, could you just remind us what your Mansoor DELANE grade was for the Chiefs?
A- for Mansoor DELANE.
There we go. All right. On Sonny Styles, obviously this team has a new defensive coordinator in Durante Jones coming from the, I guess we can call it the Brian Flores tree here. The interesting part with that Brian Flores tree is he has kind of made role players at the linebacker spot turn into like and elevate those types of talents. So he hasn't had someone like Sonny Styles in that department. Someone who has is Dan Quinn in certain defenses. And I still think that Dan Quinn is more of a CEO type, and this really is Durante Jones. But just imagine what someone like this could do in that style of a very explosive, high variance. We're going to call sacks. We're going to call turnovers. We're going to get the football back for our offense. And I'm excited to see it. Like, I don't think he's just going to play a true off-ball standard linebacker role. I think they're going to get really creative with him, and that defense is known for their pressure looks and their pressure packages. Yeah. So we're going to see him blitz and go one-on-one with running backs who are going to be testing their pass protection, and I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, he's also played safety at Ohio State before transitioning, so he's really new to the position. So there might be some, like, you know, he gets beat by some coverages as a rookie, but the interviews were fantastic, and you can extrapolate that he's going to be one of these guys that really figures it out pre-snap, understands tendencies, and that's obviously a huge critical skill set for an off-ball linebacker. I mean, just for you guys that don't know Sonny Styles, 43.5-inch vertical, 99th percentile broad jump, 97th percentile weight adjusted 40. And I think that the special part with him, he's 6'5". A lot of the best linebackers, like if you look throughout history, are like 6'1". He's doing that at 6'5". So all this like zone coverage, like you have this huge pterodactyl over the middle of the field. I think that's where the upside could hit with him.
I can't wait to talk about both sides of the ball for this Commanders team this offseason. They went through drastic changes at both their coordinator spots. I'm sure they'll make some offensive picks, so we'll talk about that in, you know, our draft grades after all 7 rounds are complete on Saturday and Sunday. But, you know, David Blau is going to make this thing a bit more traditional on offense, and then on defense it's going to be a little hectic. Like, and you have both Sonny Styles and Frankie Louvu as blitzers from that linebacker spot. That's a pretty cool combo, along with Odafe Owe and chase down situations on the edge.
And Leo's a freak athlete himself.
And Leo, yeah, this is a enticing athletic quartet, let's say, of that group.
I will say, according to our lads, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projected new starters on this defense. We talked about chemistry and putting all the pieces together. This could be one of these units where in December this defense looks a lot better than in September, and it'll be way better than it was last year when they couldn't stop anybody.
Let's talk the New Orleans Saints, who sat there at number 8 and got their guy in wide receiver Jordan Tyson out of Arizona State. You and I talked about this as being a true possibility. Nick Underhill, who we'll talk about here in a moment, had some incredible reporting that they absolutely loved. Jordan Tyson, this fit makes a lot of sense when you talk about the trio of pass catchers that they have, and namely the duo at the top. Like, it's a real complementary of Chris Olave and what he brings to the table versus Jordan Tyson and what he brings to the table. Because the 10 best routes that Jordan Tyson had this year, again, you could argue were the 10 best highlight reel plays of any wide receiver in this class.
Yeah, his best moments are just immediately at the line of scrimmage, creating a bunch of separation. He has just like really crazy like agility in short spaces, and he does it at 203 pounds. So there's a physicality. He at 26 bench press reps. There's a lot to like with him. I do think he needs a little bit more development, and I think that he's going to get that with the Saints with this like really young nucleus. So I think, like you said, Chris Olave, the downfield element, he's really efficient with his route running. And then I think Jordan Tyson's more the freestyler type, which I think cost him some pretty valuable reps. And there's some reps working over the middle where he just slides instead of fighting for first downs. And that kind of bothered me. But now that he's in the NFL, maybe he hits a kind of another gear. So I think in some offenses, I wouldn't necessarily love this, but I think the Saints offense could use some more freestyling with it. Because Vele, like you said, big slot, Juwan Johnson, big target slot. Chris Olave isn't like that amazing underneath. And I think that Jordan Tyson's going to be shaky at the line of scrimmage. And they did not have that on the roster currently.
What was your grade for this pick?
I gave this one a C+, but I'm down on Jordan Tyson versus everybody else. So consensus rankings had him 11th overall. I had him 22nd overall. So I'm going to stick with like my scouting report on this. But I do like the fit.
Yeah, just a few underlying things here with Jordan Tyson. His body control is amazing. He loves to tell a story with his routes. You saw it with, 2 of the 20 routes that he ran at his individual workout. It is Garrett Wilson-esque, if you want to put that out there. Devontae Adams-esque. He talked about how Devontae and Doug Baldwin were some of his idols at this wide receiver spot. And you kind of see it with, again, hesitation, toe drag moves that he brings out there. Now, sometimes it can be a bit over the top and it's not in the phase of the play. Kellen Moore is going to make sure it is,
Valid.
We really believe in Kellen Moore as a coach. For one, what he extracted out of like Jalen Hurts and that offense, winning a Super Bowl with the Eagles, and then what he immediately brought to make, I think, the Saints kind of a competitive and feisty team, even if they necessarily shouldn't have been this past season. This is somewhat of a risk, though, when you just look at the history here. I mean, tours ACL, MCL, and PCL in 2022 at Colorado, 2024 collarbone injury. We had hamstrings all throughout the process, and that's what led him to not go through combine workouts. His yards after catch numbers are horrific, but not everyone can do everything. And if he really refines his game and understands, again, the economic movements of, okay, when can I free flow? When can I ad lib and really get this guy going in the wrong direction versus, okay, it's 3rd and 5. I've got to run this slant. I've got to be powerful. He can't shove me off my spot. Then I think the sky's the limit here with Jordan Tyson.
Definitely agree. I think the sky's the limit. My comps for him were like Stevie Johnson. If you guys remember how nasty he was at the line of scrimmage, he's not the same caliber athlete that Garrett Wilson is, but I think there's some similarities. And then I think like the baseline comp was like Deontay Johnson, but Jordan Tyson plays a little bit more physically dominant than Deontay Johnson did. But just like thinking out loud, Keenan Allen's very dancey at the line of scrimmage, and obviously Kellen Moore had a lot of success with Keenan for that year or two. Hopefully he kind of studies that tape and kind of cleans things up, because the acrobatics and the wiggle within the first 5-10 yards of the line of scrimmage, I think is like pretty special. He just got to hone it in.
And even the tight window targets, there are times he got his hand on footballs that other ones couldn't by throwing back his back shoulder and, again, being very acrobatic with these. Then the other part was right now when he hits the ground and goes to the ground, they just aren't completed at a high enough rate. He has talked about, though, again, his brother is an NBA player, and his brother kind of had to kick him into gear in these last 3 or 4 years and say, hey, stop playing video games, go work on your craft. And you've kind of seen this development year after year from it. Hayden, we know Nick Underhill is very good at his job.
Too good.
He recorded a full podcast and video ahead of this pick, knowing it was going to be Jordan Tyson.
Yeah, that's why he didn't text you back. He's like, I'm busy. I'm texting with the GM.
Correct. Just to kind of link pick 7 and pick 8 here together, because the Commanders, obviously adding someone like Sonny Styles is important, but in this offense, it is Terry McLaurin and then just a bunch of dudes right now. It's Treylon Burks, it's Luke McCaffrey. maybe it's Brandon Ayuk in August or July or whenever
September.
the 49ers
It
feel
might be
like
September.
And who knows what shape Brandon Ayuk is going to come to. So the Commanders also don't have a second round pick right now. So the next time they can even take a wide receiver potentially is 71 overall. And you and I have done enough of these mocks that finding a wide receiver at 71st, it's going to be some type of veteran here too.
Yeah.
So that's a major red flag on the Commanders roster at this point. And I just want to make it known because, again, we saw numerous wide receivers go after them, and especially at number 8 overall.
Yeah, good point.
Okay, that brings us to number 9. And the Cleveland Browns, after that trade down, after acquiring a few picks, I'm sure they got the target that they wanted to. And this is Utah tackle Spencer Fano, and played left tackle, in 2023 full-time, then moved over to the right side to accommodate Caleb Loma, who was also a first-round pick over the last 2 seasons. And this just simply fits what the Browns have been doing. Athletes, a lot of experience, and really position versatile that you can play them on either spot.
Yeah, and then also throw out like a really good athlete on top of it. It's like 9.8 in the RAS department. His feet were sensational. If you guys watch the combine, you see it. When you watch the tape, he just gets out of his stance. He can get to his landmarks and pass protection with ease. And then Utah actually was a really run-based offense, and they would purposely run behind him. He's pound for pound really, really strong. I think that he can add just more volume to his body. 6'5", 311 pounds. But I just think he's a gifted athlete. And my comps were Rashawn Slater and Elijah Vera Tucker. And obviously Rashawn Slater has got it done without like really crazy long arms at left tackle. And I think Spencer Fano is going to play left tackle for them. Obviously, he played a bunch of right tackle, but the left tackle spot was the one that was missing. Titus Howard can move up and down the block, so we'll kind of figure this one out. But he was my 6th overall player. This would have been like the selection that I would have been looking at if I was the Cleveland Browns. So the fact that they knew the board, knew that nobody else was in this range, trying to pick tackles to slide down, get the extra capital, and make this selection here. There's a ton of upside. In worst case, he'd be an awesome center or guard. I like this one as an A+. I don't like complimenting the Cleveland Browns very often, but what's not to like here?
Yeah, look, the quarterback play is going to be questionable probably, but you have Todd Monken, who has done some really great things with the Baltimore Ravens, a running back in Quinshon Judkins, who you and I really like.
He's a beast.
Harold Fannin as an emerging second-year tight end who can win after the catch. And like you said, Andrew Berry maybe hasn't made the perfect decisions or the best decisions at all times, but they played the board, I think, perfectly here, where it was going to be most likely offensive lineman and wide receiver in some order with their first 2 picks in round 1. And they moved back just a little bit to get in the sweet spot, right? We talked about it. The first 8 selections, probably not an offensive lineman, had to go there. And instead, like this 9 to 20 range was going to be loaded. And they were just able to move back and get the number 1 offensive lineman on the board. Again, that brings them positional versatility. And you look at their depth chart right now. Slot in at left tackle, Zion Johnson at left guard, former first-round pick, lots of misses, but former first-round pick and still young. Elton Jenkins, good when healthy, has not been healthy, but good when healthy. Tevin Jenkins, you can kind of say the same thing. And then Titus Howard, old, veteran, playing lots of positions, and has also missed some time. So there's some questions here, but if you squint and injury luck is on their side, you have a nice starting 5 offensive linemen up front.
I disagree. I think this offensive line is still pretty whack, but all of their guys from last year left, so they had to do something. Spencer Fano is a centerpiece for him. So, yeah, Andrew Berry hit on almost all of his picks this last draft. I think Spencer Fano is going to be a next pick, and nothing matters until you get the quarterback position, right?
Correct.
Thankfully, 2027, apparently they got some guys, and there's even a Manning in the class.
Okay. Take it forward to pick number 10. The Giants are back on the clock, and they get the second offensive lineman in Francis Mauigoa. We're projecting him to play immediately at right guard, take that place of Evan Neal or Daniel Falale, and then maybe in 2027 or 2028, take over for Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle. For most of the process, Mauigoa was viewed as the offensive lineman 1, and he still finds himself in the top 10 despite the reports of potential back surgery, something with his disc, an injury heading into his first NFL season.
So this is an A- for me, and they got the A+ for ARVELL, REESE. So I think the Giants are just stone cold winners. I had them mocked with a linebacker in guard. I got both of them incorrect, the wrong players, but the correct positions. And this just screams Harbaugh for me. And then in terms of the Francis Mauigoa evaluation, played right tackle his whole career, 5-star guy. You see that in flashes. I think at the very top of these pass reps, you can see a little bit of the lack of fluidity there. But as a guard, you're not going to run into those problems, and he's going to just kick ass on 3rd and 2s. The red area, the Giants were horrific trying to run the ball. And in tight situations, you got Cam Scadaboo, Jackson Dart. You want to do a bunch of quarterback power. Jackson Dart's been getting his ass kicked. Francis Mauigoa is going to help you out there a ton. So I think the fit makes a lot of sense. To me, it was just Mauigoa or Vega, because I do think Mauigoa is going to play guard for the next couple seasons. So the Luminor's got 2 years. Andrew Thomas will be here for the next decade. I liked him more as a guard. I think him as the 10th overall pick as a guard checks out to me, and it's not a surprise that the Giants valued trenches over anything else.
Does it make sense to you that they opened ARVELL, REESE and then Francis Mauigoa and didn't flirt with, the Jordan Tysons of the world, or wide receiver, or cornerback, or safety?
Yeah, I mean, this is Harbaugh. Last time I checked here, I was not surprised by this at all. Were you?
No, I totally agree. Now, maybe the only thing that I could have seen was like a real double up and got ARVELL, REESE and Caleb Downs, and like, hey, we got both Ohio State guys. We can go back to that Ian O'Connor tweet where he said that basically John Harbaugh would end the world if they gave up an average of 4 or 5 yards per carry. That probably wouldn't happen. But again, it always seemed like the plan was always one for offense, one for defense. We're going to hit you in the mouth. These are going to be the identity. These are going to be big boys. And kind of, not alarming, but jarring that Francis Mauigoa, in his first interview on television after getting drafted, says, I will literally die for you, Jackson Dart. And he repeated about 3 or 4 times. So we know what his mindset is.
Yeah, I'm sure Jackson Dart's like, well, that's not going to help me. So don't die on us here. Yeah, I mean, it's just classic Giants here, like all the way through with Harbaugh. I always thought the Jordan Tyson stuff just like never really passed the smell test. Maybe they would have taken him at 10th overall here. And I know a lot of Giants fans wanted Caleb Downs, and he was like most linked to him at 5 and 10. They skipped on him twice here. I think at the end of the day, Caleb Downs, while we all loved him, he is a safety without elite athletic testing. So with Francis Mauigoa, a 5-star tackle with guard versatility, I don't think that you can hate the pick with, protecting Jackson Dart more than like a safety. And they already got Javon Holland.
What was your grade for this one?
I gave this one an A-. So pair that with the A+ I gave them. I mean, the Giants are clear-cut winners to me.
Wow. Your team, you believe in them. Your team.
They
were last year.
I wish they had Dexter Lawrence, but
All right. On to number 11, where the Dallas Cowboys trade up and the Miami Dolphins trade out. Here is the compensation. It's just 2 5th-round picks, 177 and 188, that the Dolphins received just to move back 1 spot. And in that 1 spot, the Cowboys select Caleb Downs, versatile safety out of Ohio State. And Hayden, all along, we all said that they need to exit with a superstar, an identity shifter on the defensive side. There weren't that many, and I didn't even know if Caleb Downs would make it to this point. He did, and he is a Dallas Cowboy.
Yeah, it's a perfect fit for what the defense does not have on the roster. Their linebacker play is bad, and their safety play was really bad last year. They just brought in Jalen Thompson, who's undersized, kind of like Caleb Downs, but Caleb Downs is just – he plays so much bigger than his size. His instincts are off the charts. Like, everyone knows how good of a player he was. He made 107 tackles as a freshman at Alabama. Nick Saban said that he could have started for NFL teams as an 18-year-old. That's how good of a player he is, and he's just – developed in NFL schemes with Matt Patricia last year. So it's impossible to hate this pick. The Cowboys fans wanted Caleb Downs to fall. I thought there was a chance that they would have to trade up to like 7th overall to get him. They stayed patient. They kept their 20th pick and then moved down from there. And they got a really, really high floor player. He's going to be an impact player. It's just going to happen at safety versus other positions. But I think with the state of their defense, you can't complain.
Chat loves seeing everyone putting their own grades for each of these picks. I'm reading every single one of them. That is for sure. Yeah, you mentioned Christian Parker, his defense coming from Vic Fangio. We saw, albeit different positions, that defense really take themselves to a Super Bowl caliber level when they added Quinton Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Not saying he's going to be playing in those two roles, but it just shows you the importance in that side of a system of having defensive backs. And he can, be a post safety. He can drive down in the box. He can do all of it. And I mean, taking him over RUEBEN BAIN, for example, I think is a statement of intent, because I think both of those positions were of need here for the Cowboys.
My comps from Eric Weddle, Brian Branch, Buda Baker, and we're talking about like absolute studs. So yeah, this is the range. Just remember, when we're doing mock drafts in the future, safeties, we love them, and then they fall in the draft 5-10 spots. So that's exactly what happened here.
Malik Neighbors, as soon as he saw the pick, just got the couch. Being like, that guy's gonna hit me over the middle of the field a couple of times.
Yeah, bummer.
bummer for you, sir.
At least he's walking. That's good.
Yeah, good to see. Okay, let's then take it right next to the Miami Dolphins at number 12. Picked up 2 extra fifths and got their new right tackle, most likely, in Caden Proctor. John Eric Sullivan coming over along with the head coach and Jeff Hafley from the Green Bay Packers. It always felt like this was going to be a big boy, and Hayden, they drafted the biggest boy to block.
Yes, they did. For them. This one I gave the Dolphins a C, because this one comes with, I think, a lot of risk. First of all, the risk is just, what's his weight? It's kind of ballooned up and down. This last year at Alabama, playing a little bit heavy for me. And then he was getting beat with a bull rush because he was off balance and overweight. And then he's being beat inside on occasion, even outside. So last year's tape was like not, worth the 12th overall pick. We're projecting forward here. And obviously the Dolphins have all the time in the world. And then on top of that, he's going to be playing right tackle, I presume, because if they wanted a guard, I'm assuming they would have just drafted Vega Ione, because he's an awesome player and already plays guard. So I think he's going to play right tackle. Austin Jackson era is over. And obviously you have to project him switching sides, which he has not had to do before. So there's a lot of risk in this one. They have all the time in the world to continue to develop Caden Proctor, a 5-star guy. Obviously his best reps are sensational. And they have 3 really highly athletic players at left tackle, center, and right tackle. And at least you give something for Malik Willis. So not surprised they went trenches here. If they wanted a guard, I would have picked Vega Ione, and that's why I think he's playing tackle.
Yeah, I do wonder where he takes snaps for the first time as soon as like offensive activities open. Because is it at right guard for Jamari Salyer, or is it at right tackle for Austin Jackson? Because it's not going to be at left tackle. Like John Eric Sullivan already said that we like our center, who's arguably the best center in the league right now, in Aaron Brewer, and then left tackle and Patrick Paul, a 2nd-round pick out of 2024. But you look at where Caden Proctor has played. 2023, 806 snaps at left tackle, 0 across the board everywhere else. 639 in 2024 at left tackle, 0s across the board everywhere else. And then this past season, 963 snaps at left tackle, 0s across the board everywhere else. I will say Nick Saban had some interesting comments about Caden Proctor of like, hey, when he's in the facility, when he's around everyone, he's great. You kind of have to keep an eye on him. And it makes sense. His weight ballooned up, but I do also want to recognize that Daniel Jeremiah said that Caden Proctor had a really positive and strong process and really impressed teams that way. And I want to add that when he was drafted says, quote, we're going to run the shit out of the football. So we'll be talking about Devon Achane next week when we get to our running back rankings. That's for sure.
I mean, how many rushing yards is Malik Willis going to have this year
for real
behind them? By the way, if you go back to that last tweet that you had shown, Dolphins fans absolutely letting it rip on the bottom right. I can't say these words or I'm going to get soap in my mouth, but you guys can read.
I didn't even recognize that. Yeah, that's the extra commentary that everyone gets. Just so I didn't screw up and maybe Dolphins fans yell at me. Hayden, your grade for Caleb Downs was?
I gave them a B. I think it was an awesome pick. That I can't be too stoked or too down on it. And then this one was a C.
Okay. Caden Proctor was a C. And that brings us to what I believe was the shock of round 1. The Los Angeles Rams at 13 overall, sticking and picking and taking Alabama quarterback Ty Simpson. Well, I mean, they were certainly tight-lipped about this over the last weeks, over the last few months, in a way, because like Ty Simpson, when he was deciding to enter the NFL after 15 starts in college, reportedly by multiple people, reached out to Les Snead. And Les Snead said, yeah, man, I think you're a round 1 quarterback. You should come out. And we had heard that up as soon as the Rams traded the 29th overall selection for Trent McDuffie, that they weren't going to take Ty Simpson. I don't know many people who really believed that would be here at the 13th overall selection, especially Hayden. This kind of flips that quote unquote all in narrative on its head, does it not?
It really does. I gave this one a D plus, and does it make me uncomfortable that the Rams, one of the best organizations, thinks differently? It does make me uncomfortable, but we both watched Ty Simpson, and most people that watched Ty Simpson did not really love him consensus wise. He was like 38th overall. I had him at 44th overall. Obviously, sometimes quarterbacks go higher, but I was a big like Jackson Dart guy, for example. I just didn't necessarily see it with Ty Simpson. All that said, this is the best landing spot for Ty Simpson because I think he needs like physical development. I thought that he was pretty weak, and I think that showed up with some of the hits that he was taking and his ability to bounce back from it. But also, I thought that he was like straining to throw the ball into tight windows, and the ball would kind of all of a sudden sail on him. We saw that with like JJ McCarthy, another like slender player. So he's going to have a chance to physically develop. I thought his play going through reads was actually pretty impressive for how inexperienced he is.
Totally.
But so there's some things to like. It's just, can you get through a full season with him? How much is he actually going to develop? But we'll get this answer in like 2 or 3 years from now. So I did end up knocking it just because like I want the Rams to like go get a Mekhi Lemon, go trade for another veteran, like go draft Kenyon SADIQ, whoever you think is going to help your roster. Like I think that RUEBEN BAIN would have been excellent here. When you got a Super Bowl window, I want you to maximize it. You could do this song and dance next year if you wanted to. So I was kind of disappointed in, the other guy that was disappointed by this was Sean McVay, who was acting like a total weirdo on the mic.
Oh, I was watching a different stream, so I didn't see Sean McVay.
Should I tell you about it?
Well, here's my thing. I heard from Joel Klatt that apparently on the NFL Network broadcast that first Les Snead loved Ty Simpson. He told then Sean McVay to go watch it. And Joe Klatt's words were that Sean McVay then loved Ty Simpson.
Okay.
Then apparently Sean McVay today calls Matthew Stafford and says, hey, man, we're going to draft a quarterback. Don't get weird about it. You're still our guy. And that was that. So what did I miss about Sean McVay being a quote unquote absolute weirdo on the mic?
Well, I mean, usually like these guys after the draft, it's like we're in some like Malibu mansion and it's fist pumps. It's making fun of Belichick and all that. And then Les Snead was like, I grew up in Alabama. Like, look at all of like how much he had to overcome. He didn't transfer out of there. Everybody was giving him a hard time because the season was collapsing in Alabama. And then Sean McVay barely said any words. I didn't see him crack a smile over there, and Les Snead was kind of hogging the mic. So the fact that you told me that story where Joel Klatt was saying that Les Snead was like really happy about this and kind of had to drag Sean McVay along, I felt that watching the 15-minute presser there. So yeah, maybe they kind of disagreed with this one, and Les Snead's playing for the post Matthew Stafford era, and Sean McVay is just like
maybe the post
all in
Sean McVay era.
That's what I'm saying. Like this, like almost like made me like hold up here. Like maybe in 3 years from now, we go back to this moment. And was like, oh, Sean McVay like didn't necessarily like love this pick, and he wanted a RUEBEN BAIN, a Mekhi Lemon, or a trade up for Carnell Tate.
Yeah, I know we're already an hour into this. There's a lot to hit on here though, so
Yes.
I'm kind of going to take my time with this one. In that, when you're on the board and you've been trying to trade up for pass catchers over the last 2 years, the failed Brock Bowers trade that was like this close on the 1-inch line, the maybe move up for Colson Loveland or Tedero McMillan last year. Like you flirted with adding AJ Brown this offseason, but you're keeping Devontae Adams. Also, Puka Nakua's weird offseason. And I'm not saying it's perfect and there's like a definite wide receiver one out there, but Mekhi Lemon's there, or Casey Concepcion, or Omar Cooper, or Kenyon SADIQ. Like these guys would help. And we also talked about how both their tackles are basically in a contract year, and there were plenty of offensive tackles on the board here as well. And that could also, get your contracts cheaper that you can pay all these defensive pieces. But my thing is, it just really comes back to Ty Simpson. Like opening 8 games of the season, 20 passing touchdowns, 1 interception, 68 completion rate. It was good stuff. Like you said, I think he works the middle of the field better than Fernando Mendoza does right now. I think he makes full field reads more often than Fernando Mendoza does right now. But those last 7 games, 8 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions, the ball just got away from him. And I understand it could be the loss of the weight and the injuries and all that type of stuff. But it comes back to this point. We just don't know if that's it because he doesn't have enough starts. I mean, he has 15 starts and that's it. we don't know what we're getting. We don't know if the first 8 weeks of the college season were just the best football he's ever played in his life, and he's never going to be able to reach that peak again. Because even in those, the ball kind of sailed him at times, and he would overthrow these passes, and it just didn't make sense. Now, again, there are some real positives. He has some movement to him. He has quick game ability. And as we said, he'll make these tight window targets and these corner routes and everything like that. But I mean, just one season as a starter, there have been 6 round 1 quarterbacks and now 7 with fewer pass attempts than him since 2000. That was Cam Newton, Mike Vick, Trey Lance, Anthony Richardson, Mark Sanchez, Kyler Murray, and now Ty Simpson to this. All those guys, other than Mark Sanchez, are like freak athletes.
Freaks.
You know? And he's not. He's not. So it just really concerns me that, hey, in order to get better, I think you need to have reps. And now what? In a best case scenario, he's not going to get on-field reps for 2 more seasons. So we're not going to like even figure out actually what he is in terms of physically stronger or exactly, you know, who he is and which version Jekyll or Hyde on the field until Matthew Stafford is done or gets hurt.
Yeah. My comps were Kirk Cousins, which Sean McVay has experience with, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and I kind of want Ty Simpson to like put on the weight that Ryan Fitzpatrick did, and then unfortunately the other comp is JJ McCarthy, which is like this exact branch, this exact range, which makes me kind of nervous. I'm gonna force you to give your own grade here because this was like such a monumental pick here. So I went with a D plus. What would you give this?
I probably would have gone to C minus. Like, if you're a Rams fan watching this the next day, if you're in the chat right now, I would love to hear if you like to plan ahead with your quote unquote quarterback of the future, or if you want to go all in and try to win a Super Bowl in these next 2 seasons. Like, which version did you want to have here? And I think the majority are going to say all in.
Yeah, I agree.
My comparison was Jimmy Garoppolo, which is hilarious because it sounded like they wanted to bring Jimmy Garoppolo back to this team as the backup, and he was the backup last season.
Speaking of backups, somebody asked, like, what's the role here? And McVay said he's going to go compete with Stetson Bennett. And, like, I mean, you don't like to hear that from the 13th overall pick. That's what just, like, made me feel weird about the McVay interview.
All right. We'll move on because the 14th overall pick was one that was commonly mocked and one I didn't actually expect to happen looking at their roster and listening to their fans. But it makes total sense when you see him in a Ravens uniform, and it's Vega IONE, who's immediately going to come in and most likely start at left guard and be a freaking bulldozer in this Declan Doyle offense.
I love the pick. I love most of the Ravens picks here. I'll give this one an A. He was my 10th overall player on the board. I think that you can make an argument that he was like as good at his position as pretty much everybody else at their positions. He was so dominant as a run defender, and he was such a good athlete at his size that they would like operate him as like a fullback and like get him in motion. He would just like absolutely truck stick everybody. And then in pass protection, which is just as important because this team has not been that good in pass protection recently. 0.7% pressure rate allowed. Just ridiculous stuff. So yeah, he's probably one tier down from like the best guards to come out of the draft, but I would not be surprised if there's like a David DeCastro level upside with him. He's one of my favorite players to watch. Not just doing normal guard stuff, like pull out his highlight tips of him in motion. I mean, is not what you want to see as an opposing linebacker. Well,
speaking of motion, I mean, imagine your first interview as a professional saying, quote, "Nobody is going to stand in front of me and survive."
What's up with all these guys wanting to kill each other? It's like so like the trenches is like a death. You're like, no, like just block them. That'll work.
Been watching too much Game of Thrones during your combine training activities. That's for sure. I mean, he's nasty, man, and he has the mindset of exactly what this like Ravens team is built on. Again, hand up. I didn't think it was going to happen. I thought they had like 3 guards that they kind of liked that they would go into 2 offensive pieces, but this is one you just like can't complain about. You're not going to complain about. I'm very intrigued to see what this offense is going to look like going from Todd Monken to this new coaching staff. But this is like a plug and play guy for the next 5 to 7 years.
The other thing I'll say is the day 2 guards, especially with Kalen Rutledge off the board, it's pretty disgusting. Like there's just like not a whole lot of them. It's a really bad guard draft class. So I wonder if they're doing the calculus. We want another pass catcher, but there's just more depth on the second round for that versus the guard position.
Well, if people think that the Ravens just catch BPA as it falls every single year, you could argue that Jason Light is the king of being in the right place at the right time every single draft, because at 15 overall, they get RUEBEN BAIN, the edge rusher out of Miami. I mean, Emeka Egbuka at 19 overall last year, Graham Barton at 26 overall, Tristan Wirfs in his draft class as one of the best left tackles in the league was 13 overall. And again, now you get, honestly, the biggest need for the Bucs heading into the entire offseason. They weren't able to fill it in free agency, so it's again heading into the draft, and you maybe get the best edge rusher in the class when everything is all said and done in RUEBEN BAIN.
Is this not like the best pick of round one in terms of what the upside could be, what the floor is already established, and then the team need? I was looking at the mock draft data, and we got, 22,000 submissions out there. RUEBEN BAIN fell to 15th overall 2% of the time. 2%
Wow.
of the time. And I would guess that RUEBEN BAIN was, first or second or third on their entire board, just looking at how much edge help that they needed. And they need an outside rusher, and that's what RUEBEN BAIN is. So he fell in the draft probably because of arm length, but he doesn't use his arms in that way. Like, there's not winning with like long arm bull rush power. He doesn't use the bull rush very often. It's actually a lot of cross chops, rip and dip moves, some ghost moves, and he wins on the high side of it without using a long arm. So I thought he navigated things pretty well, and he uses power, but it's not like bull rush power. Not a surprise to see them all gassed up like this. This is like a borderline miracle that he fell this far. And he's going to help out this team this year, and Todd Bowles absolutely needs his help.
Yeah. Jason Light has earned the title of one of the best general managers in the league. It also helps when things like this happen to you. Again, Dan Morgan has mentioned, the Panthers general manager, that he did 1 million mock drafts ahead of this one. I'm sure the Bucs do something similar. I wonder if even 2% of the time, like you said, RUEBEN BAIN falls to them. I mean, Akeem Mesidor was mocked here frequently, and they get the younger, better pass rusher here in RUEBEN BAIN. Yeah, I mean, Todd Bowles asks these edge guys to drop at times, like Yaya Diaby does. I don't think RUEBEN BAIN will ever do that. But again, if everyone stays healthy, and injury luck has been an issue for this Bucs defense, that is now RUEBEN BAIN, Kalijah Kancey, Vita Vea. A'Shawn Robinson is a low-key nice addition for them to like add some consistency and massive body up front. Off-ball linebackers a bit tough with Servassier Dennis and Alex Anzalone, and then Yaya Diaby at the opposite edge rushing spot. So I think the Todd Bowles experience has been pretty rough over these last few years, and you've seen Dave Canales leave, you've seen Liam Cohen leave, and he's kind of just there, and they haven't been able to get over the hump. This is a nice pick in order to maybe get off the field in some third and fourth down situations that you haven't in the past.
Last two things I'll say about the scheme fit is the Bucs will also do a bunch of like loops and stunts and whatnot. And RUEBEN BAIN, when he turns the corner, he's got that edge, and all of a sudden he's coming with a bunch of power. He can really showcase his skills there. And then, like you said, they do drop their defensive ends on occasion, but I do wonder if on passing situations he kind of kicks inside, and then you have the Yaya Diaby types to kind of fall back and cover. So I think he's so multiple. He can win so many different ways that I think this is just going to be a layup pick from him. And I think that he will be in consideration for like defensive rookie of the year. I think that he's like so ready-made.
Well, this draft has a lot of wide receivers and tight ends. 2 went very early at pick 4 and pick 8. And then we waited and waited and waited for another one. And then, maybe a surprise to many, the Jets at number 16 take tight end Kenyon SADIQ out of Oregon. What is the fit? What does he bring to this offense that they don't have? And do you think that Frank Reich is going to be able to get the most out of Kenyon SADIQ here?
Could I just hate everything about this? I mean, I gave this one an F. Like, this is just, I think, really bad rebuilding from the last like 2 years. Like, you just spent the 42nd overall pick on a tight end, and then you're gonna use the 16th overall pick on Kenyon SADIQ. Obviously, SADIQ is a much better athlete than Mason Taylor is, but SADIQ is not like a proven commodity as a receiver in the ways that like that Colston Loveland that I saw on tape, and they bypassed, Mekhi Lemon, who pretty much had more receiving yards against Iowa than SADIQ had this final season. So I think this one was pretty rich. I just don't love You're trading away defensive tackles and corners, and you're replacing them with tight ends, like your second tight end. Like, to me, this is just kind of wonky. And I think that SADIQ, as freaky of a player, of an athlete as he is, there is a little bit of boom bust with this type of profile in the NFL. So he was my 31st overall player in this draft class. I admittedly am lower on him, but a lot of people that study tight ends in particular were not a huge fan of Kenyon SADIQ. So there's a lot of risk in this one. And it just didn't make sense to me when like Mekhi Lemon, Casey Concepcion, like proven wide receivers that will catch the ball and get upfield, they just didn't get them. Yeah.
They did get in one at the end of the first round. We'll talk about that. It doesn't make sense to me from knowing what Frank Reich recently was in the NFL level with the Carolina Panthers, where that team was so static in everything in terms of motions and shifts. They were in the same personnel grouping 90+% of the time in just 3 wide receiver sets. And if that's the case, then you're just not going to be able to maximize Kenyon SADIQ. Now, maybe it's going to be different when you had rookie season Bryce Young versus, 20th season Geno Smith here, and maybe they will add some stuff. I also think just the NFL has kind of passed Frank Reich and his offense by a little bit. He's
a decade ago.
Yeah. I mean, he was fired mid-season in each of his last 2 head coaching jobs. I like Kenyon SADIQ. He is, though, a bit of an enigma, and I don't know if people have a total grasp of like what he does well. Like when people projected him to the Kansas City Chiefs to eventually take over for Travis Kelce, you can get more different in terms of how they play the position. SADIQ is straight line explosion. Get the ball in his hands, either on swings, on screens. Seam routes are incredible. And I actually can't wait to see the seam routes that Geno throws to him. Like that's going to be great. I think the potential explosiveness that he brings is rare for this position, and his athletic profile certainly stands out. And I do want to add, at Oregon, he was viewed as a full-time tight end. 82% snap player, 74% of the running plays he was on the field. He is better than Mason Taylor. He was drafted earlier than Mason Taylor by the same regime. So I expect him to be on the field at all times. I'm just a little uncertain if who I thought that maybe he could be of like Vernon Davis minus 10 pounds, if we're really going to see it realized. But this is also a profile I want to bet on as a 3-year college player with a freak athletic profile, because elite tight ends are also elite athletes that is drafted in round 1. Only like 8 of those have happened in the last, 25 years. And each of those guys had at least like one awesome season. So I think there's a lot to like about Kenyon SADIQ. I am just slightly nervous about the landing spot here.
I mean, I'm completely nervous about the landing spot. I mean, if you're like ranking like the worst case scenarios for Kenyon SADIQ, like, let's say you're a huge Kenyon SADIQ guy, this would be among the worst. Like, they already have Garrett Wilson. They have another tight end on the roster, and it's freaking Frank Reich, your arch nemesis. Like, this was a really bad situation for Kenyon SADIQ. So hopefully that straight line explosiveness like really showcase itself where it's like too hard to deny in ways that like Vernon Davis had. Yeah, a lot of risk. You trade away Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, and you're starting your rebuild with, Kenyon SADIQ and the boys. It's not my favorite.
Yeah, this was for one of the picks that they got from the Sauce Gardner deal. So just keep that in mind when we're talking about impact on an NFL field on Sundays. That takes us to the Detroit Lions at number 17, and they go with Blake Miller out of Clemson, the right tackle. So a couple takeaways here. It seems like they were very honest and will continue to be in moving Penei Sewell from right tackle to left tackle. And if you ask me who kind of embodies Dan Campbell in this draft class, it would be Blake Miller. Definitely. He's tough. He plays through injury. He never misses time. He has a ton of reps under his belt, and he's super consistent, and he's immediately going to come in and start on that right side for them.
I agree with all of that analysis, and I think that's just a perfect fit because he's like ready to go. And obviously the Lions are trying to win football games today. So you can make an argument that he had like the cleanest overall tape of all the guys that we're talking about. I don't think that his ceiling is quite as high as like the athletic testing was. I think there's like some things that he can clean up, but he's going to play right tackle like he has for like the last 3 or 4 years at Clemson. And there is like a good fit here because he's so nasty as a run defender. So like the second this was called in and you're just like, oh yeah, this is extremely Detroit Lionsy. And like you said, they were being honest when they said that Penei Sewell is going to play left tackle, which I think there's like some risk in that. Tristan Wirfs, that first like half season when he's kicking over, had a couple bad reps there, and I think that Wirfs is a little bit better than Sewell, but they needed a full identity change on the offensive line, and they were able to do that in the last 2 off seasons.
Yeah, Ben Johnson left, and I believe it's very easy to attribute the downturn in the offense to that. And then their offensive coordinator didn't work out the Lions, and so Dan Campbell took back play calling and all this type of stuff. I think at the crux of it is just the offensive line took many, many steps back. Just a lot of changes to it. And you're going to see some changes this year. Again, we already talked about Paneso moving from right tackle to left tackle. You bring in a new center in Cade Mays, now a new right tackle in Blake Miller. And then, Tate Ratledge is just going to be entering his second season, and you're still playing most likely Christian Mahogany there at left guard. So this is a bit of a cycle, but we know that when the Lions are at their best, it's like basically the same 5 starters out there, and they set the tone. They set the tone for Jahmyr Gibbs to have these explosives up the front, and then that makes the passing game just easier too. Brad Holmes on Blake Miller, quote, "When you think about Blake Miller, you sleep easy. Hayden, I'll probably sleep easy when I go to bed at 2 a.m. tonight."
Well, I'm going to be waking your ass up for a round 2 mock draft bright and early tomorrow. Subscribe to the channel.
Subscribe to the channel, everyone that's watching right now. We've been doing mocks since prior to the NFL Combine. Maybe in that first mock draft, we linked Caleb Banks to the Minnesota Vikings. Now, his process seemed like a disaster. Like, what? Broken feet? Not being able to finish his combine workout. I swear it's been incredibly silent ever since that trip to Indianapolis. But you and I made this connection because we thought that Brian Flores would go back and watch his 2024 stuff and whatever games he played in 2025 and say, screw it. I can get the best out of this freak. And Hayden, can he get the best out of this freak?
I have no idea. I mean, this is like the most boom bust player that went round 1, in my opinion. If you watched him against LSU, you would have drafted him in the top 10. I think the way he moves is Chris Jones-esque. He doesn't play with the same level of consistency as Chris Jones does. And then on the low end, it's like Jerzon Newton, who's just had foot injuries and has not been able to pan out. So I have no idea. I think there was a little bit of character kind of going on with him at Florida, but his best moments were sensational. And the best defensive tackles in the NFL are 6'6", 327 pounds that could hit you with swim moves and chase you down. And that's exactly what he had. His like pass rush win rate was that of like the Mason Grahams and stuff that went way high in last year's draft class. By far the highest upside at defensive tackle was with Caleb Banks. Will it actually happen? I don't look at his feet and have a good understanding of that. I don't know the character. But if I was only basing off the tape and upside, I probably would have ranked him like, 10th overall in this class. So I don't know if this is a good pick or bad pick, but I have a lot of faith in Brian Flores.
KOC maybe is the acting general manager right now on Caleb Banks. Quote, "We feel very confident that we selected a top 10 talent."
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
When he's out there, like you said, some of those games, some of those plays, you even suggested like Planet Theory at times too. He just moves different at his size. There aren't many players like this when they work out. I'm old enough to remember Chris Jones's process, like coming out of Mississippi State at the time, if I'm not mistaken.
How could you forget about his combine?
Well,
I mean, what a process he had.
Certain segments of his process. And he was questioned with his effort and tenacity and motor and all that type of stuff. It's a slightly different conversation here, but when it works, it works. And this team tried to fix their interior defensive linemen last year with Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, and it totally failed. And Jalen Redmond is one of the more underrated interior disruptors across the NFL. And so pairing him with hopefully a healthy Caleb Banks will be a lot of fun. And like Brian Flores just creates fun on defense. He is the hammer. His system is the hammer. And almost the offense has to adjust to what they do. It's pretty cool.
Yep. Yeah. His run game numbers were really bad. But man, like they have Brian Flores to figure that out. So I really hope he hits, because the Vikings have been itching for one of these like kind of boom bust picks to hit. They haven't had one pretty much since Justin Jefferson, they're due for a Caleb Banks to like turn out to be a total stud.
Yeah, if you asked me if a defensive lineman would go in the top 18, I should say interior defensive lineman, I would have said no every single time. But look what we have. We got Caleb Banks there. And that brings us to number 19 in the Carolina Panthers, who entered this draft with the most expensive offensive line in the NFL right now at $93 million. The next closest, that's $76 million. That's the Denver Broncos. So you have to get cheaper there. They draft the prototype, Monroe Freeling, out of Georgia to man that left tackle side, maybe immediately. Your thoughts on the player and the fit?
This is an A+ selection, Josh. I love this one for the Carolina Panthers. I had him inside my top 10 overall in rankings. Depending on the team, I would have drafted him as my top offensive lineman in the class. That's how tantalizing the physical traits are. 6'7", we're talking about what, like 35-inch arms, 91st percentile in the 40-yard dash, 93rd percentile in the jumps. You watch him out in space on some screens, and he's could really move. When you watch him finish on these runs, he's finishing with a lot of grit and nasty with it, which is definitely a Carolina Panthers trait, as they're pretty balanced on offense. I love this one. I think that he's going to be their day one starter. Both their tackles right now are banged up, and Monroe Freeling, I thought his last month of the season was really good, to the point that he didn't lose physically in like the last month of the season. He had a couple mental errors because he's so inexperienced, like picking up some blitzers and loopers and whatnot. But they could protect him early on. This was like a much better pick than, if it was Kenyon SADIQ or Dylan Thieneman. Like, if you hit on a left tackle for Bryce Young for the next 5-10 years, that is invaluable. And I think that he has the traits to get that done.
Wow. I think that's the first time you've admitted that Bryce Young's going to be the starting quarterback for the Panthers for the next 5 to 10 years. You just said it. Not me. You just said it.
Now here's the negative of the pick. How is Bryce Young going to see over a 6'7" man on the left side? I mean, there's no chance.
You act like Ike Ekwonu is a small man. That brings it up because a lot of people are going to say, well, the last regime drafted Ike Ekwonu in the top 15. What happens to him? Well, he's coming off a major knee injury that he suffered in the playoffs into a contract year, and there's no timeline for him to return. You just can't count on that. And that's why they paid the minimal $4 million this year for Rasheed Walker to be like a stopgap, and maybe he gets to change his value because you didn't know, again, a prototype left tackle who checks every single box that you look for at this position in terms of athleticism, in terms of length, in terms of footwork. There weren't many of those in this class. I'm just amazed that he kind of made it to this spot. Like in many other draft classes, I don't think you see a prospect like this coming from a program like that at number 19 overall. And it stands out like that they believe that this position and continuing to build in the trenches is important because, like you said, they could have taken Dylan Thieneman to really round out that secondary. They could have added Casey Concepcion or Omar Cooper as a third wide receiver for this team. And instead, they want to get cheaper. Taylor Moton's also not getting any younger on the right side. He's been a stalwart. And then you still have, again, aging Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt at left guard and right guard. So, again, this is like your pillar piece that you build your offensive line around for the next 5 to 7 years.
I think they benefited just looking at the team, like the 10 teams, pretty much everyone since the Browns. They all have left tackle figured out, like with the Giants, Cowboys, Dolphins, Rams, Ravens, Bucks, Jets, Lions, all those teams, Vikings have left tackle figured out. So they might have just like scooped up a player that probably had no business falling to where they did just because the rest of the league had this position figured out. So yeah, home run.
If you were the Detroit Lions, would you have taken Monroe Freeling and kept Penei Sewell at right tackle? Or do you think the Blake Miller selection was good?
I would have taken Monroe Freeling. Would I have wanted to break the news to Penei Sewell that we changed your mind and you're going to go play right tackle because we have a rookie? I don't want that smoke. So maybe that factored into it.
You gave Monroe Freeling an A+. Once again, I'm a horrible host and forgot to ask about 18 over on Caleb Banks. What'd you give that grade?
I gave it a B. I didn't know how to even rank him in my own rankings. I mean, I wish I could just go NA because it's like it's either an A+ or an F. Who knows?
Well said. Well, we had a trade for the next pick at number 20. The Eagles And the Cowboys once again made a deal with the Eagles, sending picks 23, 144, and 137, and getting a 7th and then 20th overall. The last time these teams, I believe, made a trade, the Eagles got Devontae Smith. And this time they get Makai Lemon. So how does he pair with Devontae Smith with A.J. Brown almost certainly headed to another team?
AJ Brown's gone. I think there's a little bit of overlap with Makai Lemon and Devontae Smith. Like, they both can play on the inside. Now, I think that Devontae Smith is a much better downfield player, but both of those guys make crazy catches at the catch point, despite not having like prototypical size. Makai Lemon, I think in this offense will be more of the jitterbug option route. I thought his best route was quick outs, and Jalen Hurts, there's a lot of quick outs in this offense historically. Now, the hard part is we're getting another new offense here. So like exactly how this is all going to come together is going to be a little bit interesting. But I think just kind of dumbing it down, Devontae Smith more proven as an outside downfield player, and Makai Lemon's going to be working not necessarily over the middle, but just underneath kind of option type of routes. And I think it's a great landing spot for Makai Lemon. And the fact that they only had to go up a couple spots here, Makai Lemon typically was not available at 20th overall. I think it only happened 2% of the time on these mock drafts. So, you know, Howie finds the faller and makes it happen.
Yeah, there's some things happening behind the scenes here that we'll close this pick with, but just about the player and his fit here with the Eagles. I think you could argue that he had the best single game performance of any prospect kind of at any position. His game versus Iowa was actually insane.
It was.
I mean, 4 straight difficult catches in the middle of that one, off frame, a sideline toe tap. He climbs a ladder. I mean, he's just constantly attacking these corner and defensive backs blind spots, twisting and turning and putting them in the wrong direction. I did feel like at times in man-to-man coverage, especially against Oregon, a very good defense, he did struggle in man-to-man coverage, like hip pocket, because he doesn't necessarily have like that second gear. But
yes,
at the same time, he looks like the smartest wide receiver out there on the field, because his feel for spacing and distance, especially in zone coverage, is simply outstanding. I can't tell you what I believe Sean Mannion is going to bring to this offense and like pull out of this offense. We've seen it look the same and a bit different, and you can blame that on the quarterback. And then they've had success when it's Shane Steichen and Kellen Moore, obviously very good head coaches. But when it's not one of those guys, then it kind of crumbles and falls apart as the season goes along. But I just feel much better about this passing attack, and even Jalen Hurts, that I can go into a season with Devontae Smith and Makai Lemon rather than, you know, Devontae Smith, Hollywood Brown, and Dontavian Wicks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Smith and Makai Lemon are both like football geniuses when they're playing out there. They just have great zone field, a lot of toughness. Makai Lemon doesn't drop the football. He wins at the catch point on top of that. 3.5 yards per zone route once you remove the screens is the best in the class by far here. So, yeah, I think he's just a good fit with Jalen Hurts. Like, you think like slot receiver, a bunch of stuff over the middle, like he can do that, but so much of his stuff was just when he hits the outside route, I mean, that guy creates so much separation. He's just like this really like unique skill set with Makai Lemon. I think that he is a good fit for Jalen Hurts. And then eventually they're going to get a first round pick for AJ Brown in 2027. I think the Eagles will, you know, figure this out.
70% of his passing down snaps were out of the slot this season. That doesn't make him like a slot only player. That can make him a slot mostly. Yes. But at the same time, he also ran a bunch of pass routes on the outside. And again, twisting it. He's like a puppet master with those defense. Like, they were in dire straits trying to guess which way he's breaking and halfway through his stem and all this type of stuff. It was cool to see. Okay. The interesting wrinkle to this, that Makai Lemon says he was on the phone with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who picked one spot later when the Eagles traded up to draft him. Everything worked out just how he was supposed to. So the Eagles couldn't even get him on the phone, but they still selected him. So again, we always talk about how these teams do their own mocks and seem to, you know, through the grapevine, get information on who other teams are targeting. It's very obvious. And this isn't the first time this has happened for the Eagles or others, that they had to and knew they needed to get one spot above the Steelers if they wanted to land Makai Lemon. And that's exactly what they did.
Yep. Howie had the phone tapped. Once again, like another weird thing about this Makai Lemon process, like everything was just so odd. I think that for dynasty purposes, Mekhi Lemon going to the Eagles is just so much better than if he was going to be stuck with the Steelers, who've already, committed with trades and contracts to top guys, and we don't know who the quarterback's going to be.
Well, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers at 21 overall. They end up with offensive tackle Max Einacher out of Arizona State. Makes sense. Broderick Jones has been bad. Broderick Jones might be a Mike Tomlin guy. And then what we got this last week is Broderick Jones might not be healthy for the opening part of the season. Our guy, Vinegar Salted Fries, says, I like the Max Einacher. It's a fine pick given the board. He's a great developmental pick, but the Steelers with Mike T would never gotten traded in front of. They never would have been punked like that. Ever. Weak stuff. Your response?
Yeah, Mike Tomlin was like too busy drafting Kenny Pickett and whatnot. So yeah, I thought this was a really good pick by the Steelers. I think if you're grading for the flashes and the long-term viability of this pick, you can make an argument that it was like Monroe Freeling, Spencer Fanu, and then to me, Arizona State right tackle as like who moves differently, and if they hit, what could their ceiling be? He's in the mix for like one of the highest upside swings in the 20s. I'll give this one an A. He can play right tackle. You're going to move Fotano over to the left side. He was an awesome right tackle, but Broderick Jones they can't trust. And if it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, and I guess they don't know if that's going to be the case, Rodgers doesn't want to get hit. And even if he did want to get hit, he can't move. So you need freak athletes up and down the offensive line. He's really good in the run game on top of that. So I think it's going to take some time for him, certainly. And maybe he doesn't start for the first half of the season or whatnot, but they may be forced into it. And I think it's a good upside swing.
This is their third offensive tackle selection in round 1 in 4 years. Every player is different. How they develop is different. I do wonder if you just took what he looks like, his strengths and weaknesses, and some bullet points about his profile, how maybe comparable that is to Broderick Jones. Now, again, each person is different in how they improve or they don't. And I believe in Max Steiner. I mean, he's so new to football and he's so good at football already that you just want to trust in kind of these different traits that he brings. And I'm sure he's going to look pretty awesome in those Steelers uniforms. And they definitely needed this, This is a weird season for the Steelers where I know you looked at their depth chart often and said, I don't see many holes, but Hayden, if you don't have a quarterback,
that's a big
all
one.
Your deficiencies are amplified immediately.
Yeah, the quarterback's a big hole for sure. Just the last thing I'll say about his evaluation is his movement ability is off the charts. Like his problem right now is he catches guys too late and too wide, exposes his chest, and he can kind of get knocked back a little bit. He's got the recovery skills from that, but in the NFL, that's going to be a little bit of a problem for him. But that's mostly a technique thing. So hopefully the Steelers could, draft and develop an offensive lineman. And I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is pretty happy about this.
Yeah. And if there was any question or concern, Mike McCarthy confirms that the Steelers will start out Max Einacher at tackle. And I'm sure Troy Fautanu, who played left tackle in college, will move over to that side as well.
Yep.
Next, pick 22. Your guy and my mistake, Akeem Mesidor, is the selection here with the Chargers. And it makes total sense. I mean, the Odafe Owe trade at the deadline or slightly before it transformed their defense. I mean, chase down sacks, pressures, second phase plays, all of it. And throughout the entire section of free agency, they did not replace him. And so immediately with pick 22, Mesidor is their man.
Yeah, just looking at my notes on Mesidor, has great hand usage, violence, and then a pass rushing repertoire. Obviously, he should have that because he's legitimately going to be 25 years old here. He kind of reminds me of George Karlaftis, and then I looked it up. They pretty much have the same birthday. So that's how much of an outlier we're talking about. It's 2 days apart, Karlaftis and Mesidor. But man, you can kick him inside. I think that he has a lot of physicality. Now he's a little bit more of a freestyler type, but his movement ability is pretty sweet. And I just don't think that the Chargers really care about the age. This is a team that's trying to win the Super Bowl this next year. If they can get their tackles back and healthy and they can hit on one of these guard picks, they're checking a lot of boxes as a team. So yeah, they'll figure out the contract later on. But Mesidor is ready to play. And I think that his tape was just as good as anybody in this draft class. And I think that I had him pretty much ranked in this order, or in this range, accounting for the injury. So I think the tape was just like ultimately it's like too good to discount in a pretty bad draft class.
I could be wrong. I believe as of this moment, he's only the second player they've added on defense this entire offseason. It's him and Dalvin Tomlinson along the interior of the defensive line, and that's it. You know, a bunch of their changes were on offense, where Tyler Biotish and some guards have come in. Charlie Kolar. Obviously, we can't forget about Keaton Mitchell. Those guys. So this is a big deal. I mean, at this age, he has to come in and create sacks and turnovers and all that type of stuff, and he probably will. I mean, I don't want to, you know, get sucked into the Chargers experience all over again, but with Mike McDaniel, how can you not?
Yep, it's going to be a lot of fun. Last note, he creates a lot of production by staying engaged well after the initial plan. I mean, these are the type of things in the Harbaugh profile when they're looking at it, just like effort and relentlessness. He has it. Just
so I'm covering my bases, your grade for Keem Mesidor was?
I give this one a B+. And then the last ones, Max Iheanacho was an A for the Steelers. Mekhi Lemon was an A+. How he does it again.
Wow. All right. I did not think that Keem Mesidor was going to be a first-round selection. I have misses. I also have hits. And that brings us to the 23rd overall selection. And that is Malachi Lawrence out of UCF. Got the player to the team and got him in round 1. So we saw them take Caleb Downs earlier.
Yep.
And then now we get an edge rusher to, I think, be very comparable to the man we were just talking about in Odafe Oweh, as second phase, pure athleticism, chase down sacks. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, my comp was Odafe Oweh. Byron Young was another one of these guys that kind of had the athletic traits, and he's hit for the Rams. And then when it doesn't work out, it's like Lucas Van Ness, who was drafted a little bit earlier than this. So I just saw a really, really good athlete on the edge, maybe a little bit stiffer than like a top 10 pick, but the straight line speed was really good. I think that he has a lot of kind of chase down plays too. My buddy Gerald McCoy, when I was talking with those guys, he saw the same thing, that there's just a lot of chase down, doesn't stay blocked, is how Gerald McCoy phrased it. And I see that on tape, but then it's just 92nd percentile weight adjusted 40, 96th percentile in the jumps. And then his win rate, 20%, which is like a really high number, though it did come against poor competition. So it's just like, you instantly watch edge rushers and you're like, do they got it or not? And I thought Malachi Lawrence had it instantaneously. I don't know why he didn't go to the Senior Bowl and all that type of stuff, but I'm glad he snuck into round 1.
I mean, once again, back-to-back seasons, Shrine Game has a first-round prospect. They had Kenneth Grant last year, and now they have Malachi Lawrence this year. Yeah, your favorite pass rusher is also your favorite pass rusher, it's almost 1 a.m., is also an elite athlete. And Malachi Lawrence is an elite athlete.
Yep.
I also think this is telling from RJ Ochoa. Jerry Jones stopped talking to let Will McClay answer questions about what the Dallas Cowboys did in the first round. This is Ochoa speaking. Who is this dude? What is happening? Where are we? What is going on? I get it from the perspective of when Jerry Jones had Brian Schottenheimer's introductory press conference, his first comment was literally 12 minutes long before he introduced Brian Schottenheimer. So the dude just loves the mic. At the same time, I think this kind of shows you what the Cowboys do in the draft. And it is allow Will McClay to do his work, like work his magic. Will McClay is the figurehead when we get to the Cowboys draft picks. Now, once you get beyond that and some trades and when they're going to extend players or talk to agents and all that type of stuff, that's a Jerry and Stephen Jones thing. But Will McClay, I'm sure everyone knows who he is, but again, very telling that he is the one that is hyping up Malachi Lawrence here.
Yeah, there was a lot of intrigue with the Cowboys because Jerry Jones decided to call George Pickens' agent too, and George Pickens signs a franchise tag, which allows him to be traded. So I don't think that story is necessarily fully over. They claim that it's not to actually trade him, but it was just the weird timing. And
that was kind of, reported, amplified by Adam Schefter and others when, as soon as George Pickens signed his franchise tag, they say, well, he can be traded at any moment now. I thought that might mean tonight. It didn't. I don't think it'll be happening the rest of the draft because we've kind of moved away from these first round selections, but maybe it would for a second or a third round pick. But I just don't know how the Cowboys would be able to replace him in the starting lineup.
Yeah. Yeah. It's weird timing all the way around, but Jerry Jones, like all of a sudden wants to talk to the agent. I guess maybe just being nice. Who knows?
Well, let's talk about the 24th pick. Speaking of a wide receiver, and it's our guy, KC Concepcion, lands with the Cleveland Browns, lands with Todd Monken, and unfortunately lands with Deshaun Watson and maybe Shedeur Sanders. What are you expecting KC Concepcion to fulfill in this Todd Monken passing attack?
Whatever the hell he wants to be. I think that he will threaten Jerry Jeudy to be the Browns wide receiver 1 as a rookie. He's ready made. I thought his tape was excellent. You thought his tape was excellent. He was my 14th overall player. He was my wide receiver 2 in this class. He is lightning quick. I think he would have ran the 4.3s. Go watch the punt return against LSU. You can watch him work down the football field if you want to. Brandon Cisse is going to get drafted tomorrow night, or Mansoor DeLane, who got drafted, 6th overall, flew right by him. I think he's got start-stop ability, which is why they used him in the screen game. And then the toughness showed up multiple times where he would catch the ball like 8 yards out and then drag 3 guys into the end zone. You mentioned it. It's Jalen Waddle. It's Steph Diggs. I think it's like for sure Zay Flowers with room to grow, and not too surprised that the Browns went with FANO and Concepcion. Just checks every analytical box: early breakout age, dominator rating, athleticism, age, all that type of stuff. I think it's a great spot because I think he's just going to run away with this versus Jerry Jeudy and the rest of the roster.
Totally. KC Concepcion is just a freaking man. You could argue has the best releases in this class, the best routes in this class. His speed pops off whenever you watch him. His toughness, I think, is an underrated aspect of his game, whether it's, being CT and putting John Bananas on his back 3 yards in the end zone, or if you go back to his freshman year at NC State, he has 40 carries, and they're legit carries between the tackles, and he averaged 7 yards a pop on those. Or it's, as a returner, fantastic in that area. I'm happy. I'm happy that it's going in round 1. Kind of became like a bit of a quiet process for him as it went along, and we know that whenever we bring up KC Concepcion's name, people just instantly go to he can't catch. He has bad hands. He is aware of this. Scott Petrak, new Browns wide receiver KC Concepcion on the drops problem he had in college. Quote, "I'm going to work nonstop to fix it." His general manager, Andrew Berry, on 10% drop rate. Every receiver except for Larry Fitzgerald has drops. This is actually true. I'll throw Carnell Tate in there, who also doesn't have drops.
That's right.
But my thing on KC Concepcion is if you just focus on the drop rate, you miss everything else. You miss actually some spectacular catches. Again, you miss him lining up from every single alignment and winning at every single level of the field. You kind of just compared him to Zay Flowers in a way, and Jalen Waddle was my comparison. He's 2 inches taller and 13 pounds heavier than those guys. And that shows when he's on the field too. So I think Todd Monken is a pretty cool play caller and a pretty cool play designer. And this is the one that he's probably going to build that passing attack around during his rookie year. And I can't wait for it.
Yep. Total stud. A+ to me.
Wow. Big A+. You love to see it. What was the Malachi Lawrence grade real quick?
I gave that one an A. I was tempted by the old A+, but I got to save it for guys like Concepcion.
Okay. There it is. And, KC Concepcion, if you go back to 2024 when Justin Jolie outproduced him, or even this past season at Texas A&M, he's up there in terms of amount of yards that are just erased from the earth because they were thrown out of bounds.
Yeah.
I mean, you can say that with just about every college receiver. But again, if you look at the underlying metrics, his stuff could have been even better because he was open a lot more. Go watch that Notre Dame game. He's the only wide receiver that we saw give them fits this past season. Mansoor Lane as well. Cool stuff. Chicago Bears are next at 25. And they steal the Vikings pick, despite it being 7 later, and get Dylan Thieneman. Fun safety prospect that we saw at Oregon do 2 things. There, it was in a 3-3-5, be downhill, be as a pseudo linebacker. And then at Purdue, early in his college career, was more of a deep safety, going from sideline to sideline. That's a pretty sweet thing to do in this Dennis Allen defense.
Yeah, he's going to get paired up with Kobe Bryant. I think Kobe Bryant's one of the more intelligent safeties, obviously coming from the Seattle Seahawks. A lot on his plate, and you saw that in just his ability to pick off plays in zone coverage. And I thought Dylan Thieneman, we saw that obviously in 2 different schemes, being able to handle it, and he just has elite athleticism that Kobe Bryant doesn't necessarily have. So he was one of the highest floor picks in round 1, I thought. And then, he's like a 99th percentile athlete at the position. Like, if you overlap his mock draftable site with Eric Berry, it's like the same guy. It sounds crazy. Eric Berry was a hell of a football player, man. I think there's a lot of room for upside now that he fell to 25th overall. So he was my 17th overall player in consensus rankings. He was kind of in that range. There's like almost like no weaknesses like on his profile. And we saw it in multiple schemes, like you said.
Only one I can think of is whiffing on Kalen Black when trying to, be a fill player at times. Maybe some of these running backs can force him into a diving tackle every once in a while, and they break that. Yeah, I mean, we opened this process with like the Bengals at pick 12, and thinking that Dylan Thieneman could be the pick there, and nearly doubles that as pick 25.
That's safety.
Your grade.
Yeah, I mean, this is an A to me.
Love that. All right, we'll keep it moving, because next up, the Houston Texans trade up, and they trade up for my man Keelan Rutledge, an offensive guard. They gave up picks 26. Excuse me. They get picks 26 and 91, and give up pick 28, 69, and 167 overall. We had made this connection throughout the process, and it's an interior player to build around for a unit that is still reworking and reshaping themselves. But it certainly seems like they have their 2 starting guards now.
Yeah, does that look like an elite athlete in that stance? Like he tested like a complete freakazoid athlete, and you can see it for moments. He's also, like, you can see in this like still, he's so herky jerky in his movements. Like, if you guys go back and watch like him pulling, it's like he does like the robot to get out of his stance, and then once he's going, he's absolutely going. So I think mentality wise, this is like so obviously a Texans and Casario pick. He's, a team captain. He's highly athletic. He's got some positional versatility. He played right guard at Georgia Tech. I think that he could play center if they decide that they need to do this as well. I just didn't see him as a round 1 talent. He was like my 39th overall player. So I'll give this one a C+ and kind of stick with my own scouting report here. I do think that the scheme fit matters to some degree. They want to run the ball a lot.
Yep.
I just think with like CJ Stroud's skill set and Nico Collins, and you got all these weapons and stuff, I would just like to see the like CJ Stroud like either play action down the field or more spread stuff and like less like super balanced on offense. I think Rutledge is like more, we're trying to run the ball up the middle, and I'm just like kind of over that style of play with the Texans.
I led this by saying they have their 2 guards with him and Ed Ingram. And then you point out center, and I'm doing some Twitter searches. I see that Keelan Rutledge had some snaps during the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
And I also am looking at the depth chart. I wonder if he was playing center this year. It might depend on the health of Wyatt Teller.
Yep.
Or if they like Jake Andrews at center, Evan Brown, they also brought in, who's played some center in the past too. But that'd also be a big deal. Like
I know
CJ Stroud in his past in offenses had not called protections and really done a lot of shifts at the line of scrimmage. That changed last year. But then if you insert a rookie center into that, you have to have, a high degree of trust.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that is the plan. It really might be the plan. If that's the case, that's a fascinating thing to track.
I mean, fascinating. I'm kind of reading between the lines. Like, that's like a little nerve wracking. Like, this team's like ready to win. Like, look at their defense. They were just in the playoffs and whatnot. Like, if they're going to be starting a rookie center who's switching position, just like all this just makes me a little bit antsy. Like, this could hit because he's such a good athlete. But there's some risk here. So I'll stick with the C+. By the way, consensus rankings on underdogmockdraft.com, 63rd overall. So this would be one of the biggest reaches. I think they were just off there, but
I will say, Hayden, I did my best to mention the people that Keelan Rutledge could have gone round 1, and he did.
He did. Yeah. So good on you. But for grading the pick moving forward for the Texans, I think that there's, some issues.
Quick sidebar here. Did you see the mentions and the rumors that Nico Collins has been shaded as a potential trade piece? That makes zero sense to me. Does it make any sense to you?
I think for the Texans, the last thing that they need to hear, but if I'm Nico Collins, he's way underpaid. The contract that he initially signed, I think that he's probably making $10 million less than what he would get, maybe even more than that on the open market. And I'm wondering if he's sick and tired of this Texans fake BS offense that they run and kind of change, where it's all this under center stuff. And he goes a couple games in a row without getting 10 plus targets, and he's the man. So I think there's reasons why Nico Collins should be mad. I think that there's that should make me pretty nervous if you're a Texans fan.
The Dolphins moved up for the 27th overall pick. They also got pick 138 in exchange for pick 30 and pick 90, and selected another one of my guys, and Chris Johnson out of San Diego State, cornerback here. So early on at the 12th overall selection, they get their offensive lineman in Caden Proctor, and they bounce back and add to arguably the worst cornerback room in the league here with Chris Johnson.
Yeah, Chris Johnson's going to be there, corner one immediately. He is unbelievably smooth, and I thought he was one of the best zone corners after watching him. He's not overly explosive, but at the 40-yard dash, I think he runs a 4.4 flat. He has got some recovery quickness, but he just sees the game play out really, really easily. He'll fall off routes for interceptions. He'll jump routes. He understands the concepts. He claims to study football more than anybody else, and I know that everyone loved him as a player. So I think that he has cornerback one traits. My comp for him was a slower version of Quinyon Mitchell, and obviously being really fast and athletic like Quinyon Mitchell is how you become an all-pro player. But he checks every single box here. On occasion kind of got bullied, but not too often. I think how he's going to play in the NFL, all this zone coverage, I think it's a good fit.
I mentioned this might be the worst cornerback room in the league. I think it's obviously the worst wide receiver roster across all 32 teams. And we get through round one, and they haven't added to that. They do have pick 43 on day 2. I mean, does that have to be a wide receiver here? Again, if we want to run through the depth chart, we can for the millionth time this offseason. And Tutu Atwell, Jalen Tolbert, Malik Washington. We know they're going to run the ball, but they're going to have to throw it every once in a while too.
I mean, they got Malik Willis and Devon Achane. We'll see how much they're going to have to throw it. By the way, Packers, trenches, corner, no receiver in round one. I mean, this is the blueprint. And of course, this is Packers South. So don't be surprised if this is they have 3 third-round picks in the 90s. I can see them going wide receiver in that range, which is kind of how they've been playing the board in Green Bay.
Well, we have a round 2 mock draft posting. Maybe I just won't sleep. Maybe I'll just do it right after this.
We can run it back to back.
It'll be up by about noon Eastern on Friday. So subscribe to the channel and be on the lookout for that. Next up, it's another trade. Yeah, we have the New England Patriots getting pick 28, and the Bills drop back pick 31 and 125. And would you call this a surprise? Offensive tackle Caleb Lomu out of Utah, Spencer Fano's running mate. He plays on the left side. Where do you think he's going to play here for New England?
I'm going to go with the bench as a rookie, and then maybe long-term left tackle. I think this one deserves, the Brian Windhorst meme here, because he's almost the exact player that Will Campbell was. I was not a huge Will Campbell guy. I had him ranked in the 20s. I think Caleb Lomu had ranked in the 40s because they just invite so much pressure, and they just do not have a strong enough anchor and enough strength. So the way that Caleb Lomu lost is exactly how Will Campbell lost. Now, Lomu is much longer. So if Will Campbell doesn't get his shit together this next year, maybe he's going to be the long-term center for the team, or the long-term guard, and then Lomu's going to have a chance to be a left tackle. But however the Patriots are scouting, it's they like this type of tackle, a good athlete that doesn't have a lot of pop. But I'm going to guess he's going to start the season on the bench. I don't think that he's going to beat up Morgan Moses on the right side. And I don't think that he would be a guard necessarily. So I think this is Will Campbell insurance. And maybe I'm reading into this too much. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you just look at arm length, and we know that the arm length measurements were all over the place at the NFL Combine. He's at the 23rd percentile for that, but his wingspan's pretty massive at 62nd percentile, and wingspan maybe is a bit more consistent than everything else. I've also heard that Mike Onwenu might not be like long for this roster.
Oh.
I also don't know how Caleb Lomu though would fit in at right guard or right tackle necessarily, because also what I heard was he played like the reason again why FANO moved to right tackle despite being a good left tackle was because they felt that Caleb Lomu could only play left tackle. And if the Patriots are asking him to do something else, I'm certain they know more about him than I do. But the pieces, we've allowed them to align with other teams. It's tough to align them with this one.
Yeah. I mean, in the middle of my scouting report on Caleb Lomu, I said, when he lost, it did look like Will Campbell's losses, derogatory. I mean, it's just crazy that the Patriots were the one to do it. Now, I got a question for you, Josh. Did you think it was more likely that the Patriots were going to trade up or trade out with this pick with all the Mike Vrabel stuff? And did you have?
Once Vrabel did a mini press conference even prior to the draft, he already faced the music a little bit there.
Yeah.
Then I dropped my minus 500 odds that they would trade out of round one. Let's put
if Vrabel needs a PR team, they should hire Josh and I. We could have had a better plan than whatever the hell they're talking about.
Well, that's for damn sure. Okay, Kansas City Chiefs pick 29, select Peter Woods, who our buddy Dane Brugler, many others, had as the #1 player entering the 2026 college football season. We know they traded up in the top 10 for Mansoor DeLane, and here they go with adding another defensive lineman with Peter Woods. I'm not going to call him, again, a similar profile or a similar arc to Chris Jones coming out of school, but you might be able to have some connective tissue there. And just in terms of, it wasn't a clean process for him.
Okay.
It dropped and had some valleys in his play, but like the peaks were outstanding. I just would argue, I don't know if we saw any peaks from Peter Woods this past season.
I'm not going to lie. We don't watch that much college football. I don't study the draft right when this draft is over. I come into this kind of blind without any opinions on these players. And when I learned that everyone was ranking Peter Woods like a top 5 top guy, like I just never saw it, man. Like I didn't see it in the testing. I don't see it in the size. His arm length's the bottom 2nd percentile, 8.3% pass rush win rate. That's really underwhelming. Only 3.5 tackles for loss. I didn't see it with Peter Woods. Maybe I'm missing something. I think he's got like a pretty nice first step and he can kind of shoot gaps. And there's some pretty clear wins where he'll like throw a guard off balance. But it wasn't overwhelming. So I think he's like kind of the opposite of Chris Jones. I think it's a good pick. Like they don't have defensive tackle depth. They don't have edge depth. So they're looking at Peter Woods versus all the remaining edge rushers. And like, this is the pick that they wanted to make. I just never saw it with Peter Woods. Like maybe I'm just way off here. I had him ranked 54th in my rankings. I'll give this thing a C- because it fits a need and there's some upside. But admittedly, I just never saw it with Peter Woods.
And there were even some snaps where he played as an edge player. I'm certain they're not going to play him there, but you get to move him around. I could argue he's somewhat similar to Omar Norman Lott, who they took last year in round 2.
Without the athleticism.
Right. So it's a bit puzzling to me.
Yeah.
Spags can make us look foolish though, and it can definitely work out here.
Yes.
But this is one of those where you and I come late to the process, and I just didn't understand it from the first snap I put on that this guy's supposed to be a top 10 talent. But maybe he taps into what everyone previously thought, and we're just wrong.
Yeah, I'm willing to be wrong. I've been wrong many times.
Just so we are on the same page, you gave this one a C something?
I'll go C- here. Last one, Caleb Lomu, I'll go with a C. It was also not my favorite player. And then I liked Chris Johnson a lot. That was an A+ for me.
Hell yeah. Okay. The 49ers move back again. They give up pick 30. They get 33 and 179 for the New York Jets to have a triple opening press conference for NFL Draft Day 1 as Omar Cooper Jr. joins David Bailey and joins Kenyon SADIQ. A lot of people projected this to be the 16th overall pick. Hayden, it kind of reminds me of like when Joe Douglas was in charge and Robert Saleh, and everyone expected with their middle round pick to be Jermaine Johnson, and then he was still on the board later on in round 1, and they went back and got him. They went back and got the missed tackles force and yak machine in Omar Cooper here.
I had Omar Cooper at 16th overall, and in my notes I said they could trade back into round 1 to go get him. So pretty predictable here. This feels like a better range for Omar Cooper. Like,
I agree.
I saw all those like opinions that, you know, he can be the 16th overall pick. I got him inside of my top 20. I don't think his numbers necessarily had that. Like, he was not as productive as like Elijah Surratt. I thought his tape was pretty solid, but he plays kind of like Deebo Samuel without the athletic traits to necessarily match that. And yeah, I think there's some weaknesses to his game. Now, I had him ranked 36th overall. He goes 30th overall, and the Jets need more wide receivers. So I'm fine with this pick. I just never really saw like somebody that I think could grow into a wide receiver 1 in an offense. I just don't think he has that in his body. His broken tackles were really, really fantastic. Awesome. I think the Jets need some of that, but at the same time, like, he's a slot, and they drafted 2 tight ends in the top 42 picks in the last 2 rounds. Like, how they fit all this stuff in, I think will be kind of interesting.
Yeah, he forced a missed tackle on a class high 39% of his receptions. On top of that, as you said, he played out wide for only 16% of his snaps, which is the 4th lowest rate in this class. 84% of his yards came via the slot. So when they are in 11 personnel, everything's very defined here. It feels like, where it's Garrett Wilson and Adonai Mitchell on the outside, Omar Cooper in the slot. And then if you want to put Ken SADIQ in a 3-point stance or split him out and in a 2-point stance, you can do that too. It's a bit light. It's a bit light at times. I do like Omar Cooper. I just never understood ranking him ahead of Casey Concepcion, which I saw a lot out there, and I saw him projected too. I couldn't be wrong with that. This happens all the time with these things. But really good player who has some areas where he wins, and that one Penn State catch stands out to everyone. But at the same time, I saw a lot of other tight window targets or ball tracking situations that I didn't love. Yeah. And he kind of, would mistrack the football or not get his hands up in a position that would allow it to be caught. And that's just so wildly different than like Elijah Surratt on the same team. So he brings something to this offense that they don't have. And they now have 2 players that when you get the football in their hands, they can do something special with it, along with Adonai Mitchell as a vertical guy. And then obviously Garrett Wilson, your multi-breaking wide receiver 1.
Yeah. I'll give this one a B. I mean, just coming out of this with 3 first-round picks, and I don't love any of the picks, like love them. That it's kind of disappointing if I was a Jets fan, to be honest.
Final thing, I mean, his yards after catch movements, he like goes limp in certain places. It's almost rubber-ish Gumby, where he gets tackled low. I think it's a play versus Illinois. Gets tackled low. The safety then hits him, and he kind of bends this way, but stays upright and still is moving forward, and then breaks another tackle and goes for another 12 yards. It's uncommon movement with the ball in his hands, and that's going to be helpful, I think, for any offense out there. Definitely. That's for sure. All right, your grade for that one was what?
Flat B.
Okay, and we close out with pick 32. Many people mocked it, and Hayden, I thought it was impossible.
Hold on, let's go to Buffalo. They slid in there. It's a pretty forgettable pick, in my opinion, but let's not forget.
I screwed up. It's so late. It's so late.
Hey, let's get some W's in the chat for Josh Norris at 1:30 in the morning over there.
All right. Tennessee Titans trade with the Buffalo Bills. Here is the compensation. Shout out to producer Weaves for this. Titans get picks 31, 69, and 165. The Bills get 35, 66, and 101. So we know that the Titans got Carnell Tate with number 4, and Robert Saleh, I guess, gets his guy, and Keldrick Falk, who's a very different pass rusher than the David Baileys, than the ARVELL Reeses. Young, tall, 270 pounds, a moldable piece of clay. I'm excited to see what Robert Saleh does with him.
Yeah, this is an interesting selection. He's got the size that you can envision, and Robert Saleh wants just like kind of a wide 9 type of player. Keldrick Falk didn't really play that position at Auburn. So he's kind of doing some extrapolating here with Keldrick Falk, where I didn't see a lot of like burst up the field. I don't see like a ton of like pass rush moves necessarily, but he's also 20 years old. And if he's, instead of playing 4 high, he's going to be playing like true edge rusher. Maybe he's going to drop his weight, and then all of a sudden things can kind of kick into gear where that untapped upside kind of comes into play. I like this at 31st overall. When he was being considered at 12th overall, I got extremely nervous. Keldrick Falk was actually my 34th overall player. I kind of took a middle ground stance with it. There's other people that absolutely hated the Keldrick Falk experience. I kind of play this in the middle. But him dropping weight and playing legit edge rusher, I think, is pretty interesting.
There are multiple points in this process where we talked about the mid first round edge guys. When you watch them, they kind of left some things to be desired. But then you watch someone like Malachi Lawrence and you got a bit more excited, a bit more juice. And then by the end of the process, we saw that Malachi Lawrence goes ahead of someone like Keldrick Falk. But you could easily argue that Keldrick Falk's best football is ahead of him. And we have seen Robert Saleh turn those types of players into like really solid NFL talents. So,
have the faith. And actually, I did one of my comps for him was Michael Williams, who they drafted last year at 11th overall. So he would kick inside on obvious passing situations, and then play defensive end on early downs because he's going to be able to set the edge. So I could see it.
Yeah, it's Jermaine Johnson on one side, I guess Keldrick Falk on the opposite side. And then you have Jeffrey Simmons and John Franklin Myers. And then you have last year's second round pick and Oladejo as well. Plus, I mean, he brought in all of his friends that he's previously coached, and Solomon Thomas and Jordan Elliott and Jacob Martin. And I can keep going on and on there. So next, to close it out at 32 overall, to go back into what I was saying, people had this mocked. And Hayden, I thought they were kind of just taking the easy way out with the Seattle Seahawks and saying, well, they need a running back, and the running back too is Jadarian Price, and so that means they're going to take him. I truly didn't think it was possible, but here we are. John Schneider, for now multiple times in his past, has taken a running back at the end of round 1, and it's a guy with very little wear on his tires in Notre Dame's Jadarian Price. Your thoughts?
Only 10% of mock drafts had Jadarian Price going into round 1. So this was the biggest long shot of anybody. And I thought it was a pretty terrible pick, to be honest. I give this one a D. Obviously, it's a very easy scheme fit and depth chart fit. They don't have a running back on the roster. Jadarian Price projects as a starting level running back. I liked his tape. I can't say I loved it. I trust Jadarian Price for sure. I think that he makes a lot of good decisions. He breaks a lot of tackles. Like, you can see his biceps. Like, he's pound for pound strong. I thought he was bigger than 203, so I was kind of caught by surprise at his weight. And he's not overly explosive. So he, to me, is closer to like the Blake Corum tier, which typically is not a round 1 profile. There's been a lot of bust in late round 1. And I'm worried that Jadarian Price is just, it's hard for him to live up to the expectations. I think he's got a high floor. He's not going to be like out of the league. But if he was like, you know, a true 50-50 guy with Zach Charbonnet on this rookie contract, would you be surprised? Like, I'm not sure how much better Price is than Zach Charbonnet. Is that a good use of the 32nd overall pick? I don't think it is.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. And I think that John Schneider has an infatuation with running backs who are very good kick returners. That was the case with Rashad Penny. And it's the case here with Jadarian Price on 22 kickoff returns. You know, he scored 3 touchdowns, 2 against your USC Trojans.
Yes.
He just doesn't have a lot of reps. And you can easily make a case that that's a good thing. You can also make a case it's a bad thing, because he might go into this team immediately, and almost certainly he's going to lead them in touches and carries this season. We just don't know what the timeline is for Zach Charbonnet off of that late knee injury. And on top of that, though, why it might not be a great thing is because in passing situations, he has just 39 pass per reps this past season. There was some good, there was some bad, again, you could argue that like Emmanuel Wilson might do that, who they picked up, or George Holani has done that here for the Seahawks too. But I don't know. It just feels like we've all talked about this running back class not being good this year. And I just wonder if when they stacked their vertical board, it was Jeremiah Love, then the next tier by himself is Jadarian Price, and then maybe like a 2-round difference was Mike Washington or Emmett Johnson or enter whatever running back you like, Jonah Coleman. And they just felt like who's going to impact us the most in 2026? And that's our starting running back in Jadarian Price.
Yeah, if that was the case, I would like to play the board a little bit more and try to trade down like multiple times. Like, you know, if you lose him in the 40s, like I don't think it's that big of a deal. There's always guys you can trade for at running back if you missed out in the draft. Like veterans come really cheap at this position. Like some of the other negatives, like you mentioned the receiving stuff, like there's just, you have to project that. I think that he probably could do it, but like he has never done it before. I thought that there was too many fumbles on tape, and if you watch him, it happens in tight areas. And he wasn't used in short yardage at Notre Dame. And I think that Zach Charbonnet is going to be the vulture once again. So he's very much in the Kenneth Walker role. He wishes he had the elusiveness and explosiveness that Kenneth Walker has. I think he's maybe even more trusted than Kenneth Walker, but I think that they're going to be missing the juice. And I saw him as a clear like round 3 player, Kenyon Drake, Blake Corum type. I just never got there with Jadarian Price.
It certainly feels like this organization too wants to have a rotation and keep everyone fresh at the running back spot. And trust me, we have not forgotten that Zach Charbonnet is injured and he might not be available until October. Like, but once that happens, then you're going to go back to, you know, separate backfield.
Yep.
I mean, if Jadarian Price though goes in and owns this backfield and does a great job with it, we're off to the races. It's just, I kind of feel like there's a talent like this in every single draft class, and typically they aren't the 32nd overall pick. But this class is different, and we only have to pick from, you know, his peers at this moment. Like, again, his best trait is his processing information, full speed. He goes with it. Just wasn't wowed at all.
Yeah, I mean, last year, Hampton went 22nd overall. Like, that was obvious to me. Quinshon Judkins, I thought, moved a lot different here as well. You know, and then Breece Hall was a 36th overall pick. Kenneth Walker, 41st overall. James Cook, 63rd overall. Those guys, is more obvious the explosiveness. Najee Harris, he's a much smaller version of Najee Harris. Like, these are like the round 1-2 turn guys. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is in that mix as a bust, and then Jonathan Taylor goes in this range. I just think there's a lot of bust, and then there's a lot of guys that were way obvious that they could be really high-end talents, and I think he kind of falls between it. So I'm nervous. I would let him pass. If he struck out, figure it out. Go trade for somebody else. It's easy.
Yeah, and look, this is the Super Bowl team, and we're criticizing them, but and we don't have the medicals. But I even wonder, like, they haven't replaced Tariq Woolen, for example, who played the most cornerback snaps, and there were 2 Tennessee guys just sitting right there. And we know about Jermon McCoy's injuries, but you also had Colton Hood. Again, I don't want to like pick it apart too much. They just, again, won the most important game of the season, and they were awesome last year.
Well, I mean,
but a big part of that was because of Kenneth Walker in the playoffs.
The Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a terrible 32nd overall pick. It happens.
It does happen.
Jermon McCoy, terrible situation. Him not going round 1 is just brutal for him. Like, while you mentioned him, like, supreme talent, like injury prevents you from going round 1. I think that was just really unfortunate for him.
Your final grade for Jadarian Price was?
I think it was like a D.
Okay. If I forgot someone's grade, I apologize. We will link all of Hayden's grades in the description down below. I can't speak anymore. It sounds like I'm drunk. It's my mouth is not functioning at this point, and then my 4-month-old is going to wake me up in 2.5 hours. So it's time to go.
Yeah, you can see the eye bags. You're probably getting used to it. You don't sleep too much anyways.
Yep, it's time to go. By the way, for Brad Johnson, quick ranks on Niners and Bills. Guess what? Noon Eastern tomorrow, I'm going to have a second-round mock draft for you. There you go. Be locked into the channel just for you, Brad Johnson, and only because you asked. Subscribe, hit thumbs up, go and watch that. Shout out to Mosho and Weaves behind the scenes. Shout out to everyone in the chat, especially our super chatters. That's Sir Brooks for the 2 sheet, JT Lebowski for the 2 sheet, and another 20 sheet here from vinegar and salted fries. Tomorrow, second round mock draft. Saturday and Sunday, full recap and grades for every single draft class in the AFC and the NFC. Appreciate you all for watching. Up the Villa, everyone. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See ya.